Good afternoon, everyone. It's September 18th, 2025, and this is the ZBA in Chatham, the Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 28th, 2025 signing of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until June 30, 2027, this meeting of the Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted both in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder, persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the telephone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 618-283-892#, or join the meeting via the link in the Microsoft Teams entry on the posted agenda. This is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, but despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. These are the procedural steps. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. So I want to take this point in time to say, please shut off any gadget that makes any sort of noise whatsoever. And if you have any relatively lengthy conversations, please take them out into the hall. We've started our meetings with a roll call vote of all board members. We ask if anyone participating on the phone, make sure that we know who you are with your last 4 digits and give us some identification. The notice is read by our staff, Sarah Clark on my right. You or your representative, in this case it's Penrose, will provide information about your application. I will read or summarize all letters that we have received. Then we take comments from the public for up to 3 minutes. Those, anybody in the room will be recognized, and please try to form a line. Next, the applicant can rebut any oral comments or written comments. After that, the board can ask questions, and we will vote to continue the application to a date certain after this hearing. All votes are taken by roll call. And at the end of the meeting, we close via verbal confirmation and we note the time of adjournment. So we'll start the meeting with that roll call vote I mentioned, just acknowledging that you agree with this form of meeting.
David H. Feets, and I approve this form of meeting.
Ed Acton, I agree.
David S. Nixon, I agree.
Paul C. Semple, I agree.
Lee Hovey, I agree.
And Stephen D. DeBoer, and I agree.
Randy Potash, I also agree. We have one member that is absent, but she knows that she will be watching it and signing away her life, promising that she did that. And that way she stays, everybody on this board so far is going to be eligible to vote at the end of this proceeding. Go ahead, Sarah.
Application number 25-034, Penrose LLC, 15 Milk Street, 16th floor, Boston, Mass. 02109. The property is owned by the town of Chatham, located at 0 and 1533 Main Street, also shown on the town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 9D, Block 4A, Lot 1, and Map 9D, Block 4, Lot 18. The applicants are requesting the grant of a comprehensive permit under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, Sections 20 through 23, and 760 CMR 56 for the construction of 48 dwelling units in 9 structures. Also proposed is the construction of a management building. The applicants are requesting the grant of various waivers from regulations promulgated by the Chatham zoning bylaw and other local regulations. The property contains 128,492 square feet, 2.95 acres in an R20 zoning district. This was continued from May 8th, June 5th, July 17th, and August 21st, 2025.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Marion Rose, for the record. I'm an attorney at Singer & Singer in Dennisport. I'm here in Andrew Singer's stead, and we both represent Penrose for this project.
Very good. Welcome.
Thank you all. Thank you. My understanding, and with me here is Carmen Chung, who also who's representing the applicant.
And good afternoon, Madam Chung.
I wanted to say a few words. My understanding coming into this late is there have been a number of hearings. We're on the 6th hearing. And through that process, the plans and proposal has been changed as a result of conversations between the board and the public. There's a proposal before you now, and it's been a work in progress to meet the goals of providing a development that is functional, operational, and is also enjoyable, a place for people where people would want to live, and balancing that with the need and really requirement that it be economically feasible. I want to go through what we've done since the last meeting. The intent today is to provide you with a limited number of updates and responses with the hope that you may be ready to close the public comment period at the end of this meeting. The updated material include, and you have a copy of this, you've been sent this by email, but you also have a copy of this before you. It's a supplemental memorandum, a revised waiver list, revised landscape plans and civil plans. There's a civil engineering peer review response letter, a traffic engineer peer review response letter. There are 3 photographs showing the screening from the viewpoint of Jesse's Landing behind the project. There's also a model Penrose lease and an updated stormwater report. In the interim, from September 10th to now, I think there's also been a tie-in bond response, a peer response letter to the civil plans, and so we'll be responsive to that as well in this hearing. What I'd like to do is flag the high points of Andrew's memo, and members of the team will be getting into more detail as I pass the process off. So for the memo of September 10th, I want to reconfirm that the building coverage is 22%. Mark Waffle will go into details about the sign. We've provided more sign details. Joe Henderson will speak to the updated civil set. There's a question that was raised at the last hearing about the potential to switch buildings 4 and 7. Those building locations, as you all know, were different as originally proposed, and they actually have been revised to locate the smallest and the shortest buildings adjacent to the Levitt property. And that was a response to abutter concerns. We also shifted the parking area and the dumpster area location further away from the property line. And we really believe that at this point in the 6th hearing, and because of the constraints of the property, further switching of the buildings is not feasible. We're providing an updated landscape plan, and Mark will speak to that. But I do want to highlight that, and actually Carmen will speak to meetings with the abutters that have happened since the last meeting. But the revised plans do reflect additional landscaping. We'll show you that. The rear buildings have been moved away, providing more of a buffer, and a benefit of that is that it's more likely that existing trees and that expanded rear buffer will be able to be preserved. Part of the updated letters since the last hearing was a letter from one of your board members who's not here today. She noted and appreciated that this property won't be clear-cut. We're trying and really trying to keep majority of the trees, and that's a really big impact in the center of the property. That'll be impactful for both people going by the property, but also for the residents. There was a specific request for cedar siding. Jenny also spoke to this. It's, if the applicant was able and had no economic constraints, was able to do everything, this would be a great thing to do. However, there are financial, maintenance, and operational, including fire safety and insurance concerns. We don't believe that this is economically feasible. We'll speak to the traffic peer review responses, and we've also provided a model lease. And as a lawyer, I just want to flag that this is not the lease that will necessarily be used for this, but it is a lease that has been used by Penrose. And so it gives a representative flavor for what's required. I do want to, before I pass the baton, in terms of designing a project that meets those requirements, making it something that's operational, functional, enjoyable to the residents who will be living there, and also meeting the economic requirements. There's a letter from the Community Housing Partnership that I know that you will read into the record. When I read it, I literally highlighted so many parts of it because it's incredibly important, and sometimes it's helpful to hear this from someone other than the applicant. The Housing Partnership unanimously recommended that the ZBA consider the needs and quality of life of future residents of the Main Street property. They also noted that Chatham has not increased subsidized housing inventory in the past, and it's actually gone down. It was at 5%, and it's now at 4.8%. So there is a real need and an immediate need for this project. Thank you.
I was going to pinch hit for Rio for a little bit, but since he's here, he can give the remarks that he originally planned to share. He's the one that had the meetings with the neighbors, so.
Thanks, Carmen. Okay, thanks, everyone. Sorry, I was running late. I got stuck in traffic at the bridge, which I wasn't expecting to happen in September. So I'll be very brief, and then I'll hand it over to what probably everybody wants to see is updated plans. Since our last hearing, I and Mark Werfel from Crowley Cottrell had met with several of the neighbors from Jesse's Landing, as well as Rick and Ella Levitt, when we walked the property. And as a result of that meeting, what we've put into the plans is additional areas of trying to save existing vegetation, and that particularly in between our the property and Jesse's Landing, and then adding a thick row of evergreens, and that would be along the property border with Jesse's Landing, as well as along the border of the property in Rick and Ella Levitt's property. So we think these changes are going to strengthen the existing natural screening. It's going to add an additional layer of year-round full-time screening with the evergreens. And we think it's going to be an improvement from the neighbor's perspective. We also think it's a good improvement for the overall design of the project as well. So I'd like to bring Mark up now to walk through the new drawings.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Werfel with Crowley Cottrell Landscape Architecture. I'm just going to briefly walk through some of these changes. This is the site plan that was submitted in the supplemental update. It's very similar to the one we showed last time, but we fully coordinated it with the civil engineering now that all the engineering has been done, with a few adjustments for utility conflicts and the additional screening that Rio just mentioned. Last time we had some comments about wanting to know what the street-facing landscaping was going to look like. a little bit more, so we've put together just a few slides to talk about that. I've zoomed in here. Main Street is towards the top of the slide. First is the signage. So there are 2 sign locations. These are on either side of the entry drive. They have small uplights that just light the face of the sign. And they are one-sided, so only the side facing the street will have the sign graphic on it. This is the detail from the submission set that shows the construction of this sign. So it's got a masonry base, and then on top of it is the actual sign face. Here's a picture of one at a recently completed project. So it'll be very similar to this. Obviously, the name, address, and phone number will be different, but it's in this style. And so there'd be one of these flanking each entrance drive. Going back to the plan, let's talk a little bit about the planting. So highlighted here are the street tree locations. And then along the bottom are example imagery of the species that we're thinking of for this. So they're a mix of maples, oaks, and hackberries. There's also a robust layer of planting both adjacent to the buildings but also around the signage. And these pictures show what we're thinking about for that. We will determine the final kind of counts and mixes based on what's available during construction, but this, I think, gives a representation of the level of planting. So this is what you can expect. Going back to the site plan, we'll zoom into the kind of back half of the property. So towards the bottom of the screen is Jesse's Landing, and to the left is the Levitt property. So highlighted now in red is the existing buffer planting that we've discussed previously, but we reaffirmed what is there on our site visit a few weeks ago where we walked with the abutters. So along the southern border, there's this zone that we've been able to preserve that has a number of existing trees. And we identified, probably more than a dozen trees that will remain that are on the property line or just inside the property. These are a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees, and some of them are very mature, so it'll be great to save those. There's also the screening that exists already on Jesse's Landing. So across all 3 properties, there's an evergreen hedge. So these views are taken from the street, and I believe they were also submitted with the memo. On the west side of the property, there's an existing privet hedge that you can see in the left image creates a fairly robust screen, but it's most effective during the summer months. In the winter months, when the leaves fall off, it becomes a little bit more, you can see a little bit more through it. There's also 2 large existing evergreen trees that we will be saving, which are shown in both images, but maybe show up a little bit better in the ridge. So now I just want to talk about what we're doing to augment those existing screen plantings. One of the major changes, and I don't have a laser pointer, so I'll try with the mouse here, that we did was we took this retaining wall here that's about 2.5 feet tall and extended it further south. And what this is going to do is allow us to plant those new evergreen trees just that much higher. Thank you. So right in this area. So we'll be able to plant these that much higher. And then as we move further south, the project grade in this area starts to become closer to existing. So around building 3, we're actually 3 or 4 feet below the abutter's property. And then as we move further south, they kind of meet. So by extending this wall, we lift this screening up, which just makes it that much taller and that much more effective. Looking at, so what's highlighted in red is the revised buffer planting. And what we've done, the ones that have sort of the jaggedy edge are representing evergreens, and the ones with the 3 pluses represent a flowering tree, and then we have the round with a 1 plus is a proposed deciduous tree. And so we've looked at this in a way to try to have the most effective screening without it being a green wall. So we have a staggered row of evergreens up along the west side that is only broken by flowering trees where there is robust planting on the other side. Or in this case, there's an existing shed in this area. We've taken the same approach along the south side, so we've added more evergreens, and where we've determined we've introduced just a few deciduous trees that will help to break up that line and also knit into the preserved trees that are in this buffer zone. So that is the update to the site plan. I'm going to turn it over to Joe Henderson with Horsley Witten.
Hi, good afternoon. Joe Henderson, Horsley Witten. I just wanted to give a brief update on our site plans. What you see here before you is the turning radius plan. I think there was some discussion about how the new layout would work with the fire department's ladder truck. We did communicate with them, send them the plan, and heard from the chief that he had no issues with this revised plan. In general, we've updated the site grading and utility drawings. We sent those to Ty and Bond along with the updated stormwater calculations and along with our peer review response memo. And I think you have a copy of Ty and Bond's response back to us. There were 3 items on there that they left and they noted as to be, I think, conditioned, and they were all related to the landscape drawing. The first one was there's a plan is getting a stamp, as you can see. Get this to work right there. So we added a stamp to all the drawings so the board can endorse the plans. That was the first. The second was there were some conflicts identified between some of our stormwater infrastructure and trees or shrubs, and they wanted to check that. And then lastly were the greenscape calculations. And unfortunately, I did not send those drawings to them in time, so it didn't get into their letter. But we're definitely confident that we can address all these comments. We're fine with their response that they would recommend, conditioning that we get those to them, and we expect we'll coordinate that with them, as soon as possible to make sure all that gets verified with them. So yeah, that's what I have to report from the civil side. The stormwater site, no additional comments. All were closed. So those 3 items are remaining. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Rio.
Okay, that pretty much wraps up our presentation. And I think before we move on to the public comments and the board comments, I just wanted to summarize everything we've done to date, because as we've moved through this process from the beginning, we've reduced heights of a majority of the buildings. We've reduced the size of the management building. We've improved the setbacks for all buildings abutting residential single-family neighbors. We saved a significant amount of mature trees and existing vegetation from where we were originally. We've added substantial landscape buffering and screening. We've incorporated additional architectural details, both to the management building and the residential buildings. All of these changes we've made today, we think have made the project better overall. But when we evaluate these changes and we evaluate feedback from the board and from members of the public and the neighbors, we always look at potential changes. We consider 3 factors. I think we've said this earlier in another hearing, but I'll mention it again. When we look at these changes, we consider whether, does this change improve the quality of life for the residents who are going to live here? Will these changes affect our ability to provide high-quality, Class A professional property management? And also, will these changes affect the project's ability to remain competitive in seeking really the necessary state and federal resources needed to fund this type of affordable and obtainable housing? And so I guess I'll do my Andrew Singer impression and say, since he's not here, and say there's always trade-offs. So those are the trade-offs that we look at, and we think where we're at now sort of strikes the right balance in those trade-offs. So with that, our presentation is over, and I'll hand it to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do next is read the correspondences, and Mr. Nixon is going to read one of them last, unless you want to go first. And then we're going to take comments from the audience, and then after that, we're going to give Penrose another chance to speak. Then we'll take comments from the board, and we'll see where we're at. All right, so we have letters from the following people: M. Lewis Hicks, Leslie Sheenberger, C. Fucci, Ty and Bond, CCHP, Virginia Fenwick, and T. Eldridge. We are not going to read, because we've been permitted not to, Leslie Sheenberger and Ty and Bond, but we are going to read the rest. Okay, so letter from Thad Eldridge. He apologizes for the delay in his comments. He was hoping that his meager concern would have been addressed by others. As one who frequently drives along this section of Route 28, I find the lack of turnouts for bus stops to be frustrating. I would hope that a consideration for a means to get the buses out of the travel lanes during the stops could be accommodated within the design. And that was given to us yesterday. And he's at 1038 Main Street in Chatham. Martha Lewis Hicks writes on August 2025, that she's writing to express her support for the affordable attainable housing project proposed by Penrose, which could contribute 48 rental units to the housing inventory in Chatham. As a person whose family connection in Chatham goes back to the mid-1960s, when my parents built a home on Dune Drive, I have seen Chatham change and grow in many ways over the past nearly 60 years. In my 20s, I remember noticing my friends who grew up in Chatham, whose families had been part of the fabric of town for generations, could no longer afford to live here. I've seen many humble homes that once housed members of this community get leveled and replaced by gargantua homes that are only occupied by a single family and for a single season each year. I've seen how small business owners, teachers, cops, medical and restaurant workers can no longer afford to live here. I've seen how local businesses struggle to maintain a workforce of people within our communities. In order to remain a thriving community, we need to address the inaccessibility of affordable housing for young families and who fortify our workplace. If indeed we mean to do more than fret and perseverate, we must do something meaningful at once. We must seize upon the opportunities that lay right here at our fingertips to make this happen. Responding affirmatively to the housing development proposed by Penrose will allow for meaningful progress towards the housing goals unanimously adopted over 2 decades ago by the town's comprehensive plan. It's time to recognize that the time for action has arrived, and we must have the courage to embrace positive change. Next letter is from Cynthia Fucci of 20 Jesse's Landing, received on August 25, 2025. I am writing as a concerned resident regarding the 40B application for 1533 Main. I want to begin by stating clearly, I'm not opposed to affordable housing. I recognize the need for our community. However, the proposed development at this particular site raises serious concerns about safety, density, and long-term impact on the town. Safety concerns, crosswalk, and pedestrian access. At the last meeting, I raised the issues of pedestrian safety and the absence of a crosswalk near the proposed site. This location is not within walking distance to schools, shops, or services, and there is no safe infrastructure for pedestrians. I fear it's only a matter of time before a child or another pedestrian loses their life if proper crosswalks and traffic controls are not in place. The board must give weight to the peer-reviewed traffic studies and ensure that pedestrian safety is addressed before any approvals are granted. Excessive density and scale. The proposal calls for 48 apartments in only a 3-acre parcel of land. That equates to roughly 16 units per acre. This level of density is completely out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood and far exceeds what Chatham zoning would normally allow. Such density along a busy state highway does not reflect responsible planning for a small town like Chatham. To allow it would set a dangerous precedent for future progress and give the impression that maximizing developer profit takes priority over community character and safety. Penrose development model and ROI concerns. By Penrose zone admission, they typically build larger projects, close to 68 units, to achieve their return on investment. In this case, the select board approved a structure that allowed Penrose to split their desired units total along 2 sites, Meeting House Road and Main Street. This decision raises serious concerns about transparency and fairness. Each 40B project should stand on its own merit of location, density, and safety. Instead, residents are left with 2 projects shoehorned into unsuitable sites in order to meet developer ROI targets. This is not how responsible planning should be done, and it sets a troubling precedent for Chatham's future development. Site location and accessibility. Affordable housing should be built in places where residents can thrive. 1533 Main Street is not near essential services, grocery stores, or employment centers that residents can easily walk to. Sitting affordable housing in a location without walkable access undermines the very purpose of creating opportunities for families and individuals to live securely and independently. Parking and traffic impacts. The proposed parking is insufficient for the number of units and will likely lead to overflow onto nearby streets. This is a narrow section of Main Street already challenged by traffic and congestion. The addition of high-density housing without adequate parking and traffic solutions creates risks for both residents and the surrounding neighborhood. In conclusion, I urge the board to take these issues seriously. The question is not whether Chatham should build affordable housing. It should. The question is whether this particular project at this particular site in this form best serves the needs of our community. In its current design, it does not. Thank you for your attention and ensuring that decisions made by the ZBA prioritize both safety of the residents and the integrity of our community planning. And this is Cynthia L. Fucci at 20 Jesse's Landing, received on 8/29/2025. Let's see, what's next is Carolyn McClelland, and she writes on, received September 16th, 2025. At our meeting, September 4th, the Community Housing Partnership, with 5 members present, voted unanimously to make the following comments and recommendations to the ZBA concerning the Main Street Development 40B application. The Housing Partnership would recommend and ask the ZBA to consider the needs and quality of life of future residents of the Main Street property, our future neighbors, friends, employees, volunteers, and parents of children in the Chatham schools to be just as important as to all the abutters. We are concerned that the never-ending stream of concessions being requested is beyond what is reasonable, including enlarging the buffer zones to a depth that is beyond what the zoning code requires in other developments, constricting the residents' use of property, reducing the size of their only flex space within the community building, eliminating the small exercise room within the community building, reducing the interior ceiling height of the units to save a couple of feet of exterior height that will be unnoticeable and of no consequence visually within the context of the entire landscape and development, especially where there are taller buildings all over Chatham, including within the immediate vicinity of West Chatham. The square footage of the Main Street property should not be considered an asset of the abutters in order to compensate for the choice that was made by them to clear-cut their own lots so that they could maximize the use of their properties. The town has spent years working on acquiring the entirety of this parcel for the development of housing with supermajority support in town meeting. The members of the Housing Partnership would like to remind you that that neighboring towns have recently added housing lotteries where more than 400 to 600 people applied for housing. The need is very real. And while our neighbors have built significant projects over the past several years, Chatham has not increased its subsidized housing inventory at all. In fact, because the SHI is a percentage of affordable units to year-round units within the town, as market rate development continues unabated, the percentage of affordable units has actually dropped to 4.8%, half of what the state mandates through 40B, when a few years ago it was over 5%. Please do not forget what the task is here: for the town to build quality housing to address the dire need of our year-round residents and workforce. And please remember that this development will be home to 48 year-round households at both affordable and attainable income levels. Every accommodation you make for the abutters comes at the expense of these residents, who will be your friends and neighbors, who will be just as dedicated to Chatham as you are. Please consider the equity in your decisions. The Housing Partnership would advise it would be advantageous to look at this not as a burden, but as an opportunity for Chatham to express its exceptionalism, to develop the best, most attractive, subsidized, year-round attainable and affordable housing on the Cape. It certainly is a beautiful design with classic buildings surrounding a traditional New England green, with robust native planting to augment the significant trees that are being saved and incorporated into the site design. Thank you for your time to read this letter and consider our comments and recommendations. Carolyn McClellan. Lastly, we have a note from our board member, Virginia Fenwick. She is a full member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and she unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but she wanted her thoughts to be read, and Mr. Nixon is going to do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Fenwick works for a national firm, and as we speak, she's in Washington, D.C., and the fact that our president is in England shouldn't be any connection, I don't think. I hope not. These are her comments, and she asked me to read them with this thought in mind. I'll be speaking, but you should think that she's the one that is speaking. Now, that's not so easy, and I understand that, but that's what it is. So, she writes, and she addresses everybody here. I'm unable to join the meeting on September 18th, and as required, we'll watch the full hearing before our next meeting. We are required, if we miss one, to watch it in full and have, Sarah has a nice paper where we sign that we did it and so forth. Failure to do that would mean you could not vote when the time comes. For the purpose of progressing the dialogue, I provided what I hope is a helpful summary of comments, questions, and concerns. She told me that as we've gone along, it's been a number of months now, certain things get lost, they get forgotten or whatnot, and it's her attempt to set her mind at ease that what have we heard and what have we haven't, and also for the rest of us to consider. She starts with height. Height was a concern when the original proposal included each multi-family building to exceed the 30-foot Chatham maximum. Penrose promptly revised the waiver request to just 6 of the C buildings exceeding the 30-foot. To put this into perspective, Penrose confirmed the C buildings were designed to have a partial third floor, and conforming changes to this building design would significantly impact their proposal. I see that point and would like to also make it clear that the waiver represents nearly 60% of the proposed buildings. These 6 buildings collectively represent an ask of 17 feet 33 inches, with the largest request being 3 feet 11 inches and the smallest 2 feet 8 inches over the 30-foot height limit. Building coverage. R20 zoning requires 10% max building coverage. The waiver requests 22%. Like the height, I'm agreeable to this, but note, it represents a significant ask of 120%. Parking and traffic, I accept the professional's determination included in the revised parking proposal of a ratio of 1.52 and not the required 2 spaces that we have here in Chatham. Crosswalk. The ZBA board has stressed the importance of resident and child safety and has requested a crosswalk across Route 28 in direct proximity to 0 and 1533 Main. The board more than appreciates Penrose's agreement to incorporate this. We expect it. We understand it requires an application submission to the MassDOT for the curb cut permit and crosswalk after the comprehensive permit has been issued. I acknowledge the extensive and professional civil engineering work performed by Joe Henderson. You heard from Joe a little earlier, and have nothing to add to it. Landscape plans. I wish to say I appreciate the submission of the updated landscape plan as Mark presented to us. With the express commitment to not clear-cut all existing vegetation, and I observed the revised landscape proposal outlines a repeated commitment to preserve mature and perimeter trees. Color scheme and cedar siding. Early Greek Revival gable front balloon frame homes were white. As design aesthetics changed in architecture, color was introduced. However, with the town's incorporation in 1712, combined with the project locus being within the Chatham's historic business district, and it's approximately to downtown, the building color proposed in Union Studio's original design is, in my opinion, better fitting to remain white. Additionally, I thank Penrose for examining the request to consider cedar shake siding, as it is distinctly Cape Cod aesthetic. And while I like the board's suggestion, I understand the Penrose conclusion that cedar shingles present financial and operational considerations not reasonably congruent with an affordable housing development. Entrance signage. Regarding signage on Main, I'm not in favor of 2 signs flanking the affordable housing development entrance. According to landscape detail L401, the proposed signs are each 5 feet tall and 7 feet long. So she has 2 questions about that. 5 by 7 equals 35 square feet, and Penrose's narrative says not exceeding 18 square feet per sign. So she says, is the 18 square feet representing only the face of the sign or the overall size of the sign? Her second question, are the 2 signs being proposed each double-sided signage? Setbacks. There have been significant discussion of abutter setbacks. This is important because understanding abutters' impacts, concerns, and questions are, and will be for all future proposed projects, a priority for our town and its residents. I mentioned in one of our earlier hearings that getting this project right for abutters specifically and Chatham residents broadly will help answer future concerns and hopefully quell objections. Therefore, I appreciate the abutters and town citizens for sharing their feedback, and I acknowledge Penrose's multiple efforts to edit the setbacks within their development. Regarding buildings 4 and 7 and the potential switch, I agree with Penrose's notation number 4, page 1 of the September 10th supplemental memorandum regarding western, southern, and eastern abutters, noting their previous site revisions made to improve setbacks, building heights, and additional buffer screenings to address concerns. But how much is a reasonable number? And I want to get to the fourth setback, that's the street. Streetscape on Main Street, a mile from downtown Chatham, is very important. And the visual impact of this project will have reverberating impacts to future housing proposals in Chatham. For consideration, I'd like to propose the following. Number 1, management office. The impact to Main Street's streetscape of skinny roadside setbacks could be improved if the approximate 2,900 square foot management building was 1, removed, or 2, relocated to the Meeting House project, or 3, moved to the back of the Main Street project as either the current proposed building or redesigned office space within existing buildings along the southerly end of the property. This would remove the waiver request from Main Street setbacks and improve neighborhood visual character through addition of more open space and reduction of scale and mass. Lighting. Again, we're still talking about streetscape. In lieu of the clean-looking but contemporary black, bollard, and post lighting proposed, would Penrose instead consider the distinctively charming copper lighting fixtures? And this, I think she's talking about along Main Street that you see. This edit would reflect Chatham's nautical history, provide significant impact, charm, and character. Admittedly, more costly than the composite or plastic, but unlike the costly cedar shingle response, these quality lanterns, spotlights, and building lights provide longevity. And the cost delta is measurably more manageable given the quantity of lighting versus building siding and the quality of copper versus composite. I urge you to evaluate. Density. In addition to setbacks, density has also been one of the most frequently mentioned and frankly most important topics by Chatham citizens and the ZBA board. Density correlates to traffic and parking, and it also connects to financial considerations. 1, the economic viability of the project for Penrose as the impact to its pro forma. 2, the impact to important infrastructure of Chatham, such as our schools, fishing industry, firefighters, police, nurses, restaurants, and retail. In one of our earlier meetings, I raised the question and the idea of removing 1 building C along the southerly property as a way to help reduce setback pressure on the western, southern, and eastern abutters. Removal of 1 building C of 6 units would take the total proposed units from 48 down to 42. That wasn't addressed in subsequent revisions, and I remain curious what that would do to the economics of the Penrose proposal. If bedrooms are an additional proxy for density, the bedroom breakdown is as follows. 1 bedroom units, there are 16. That would be 33% of the project. 2 bedroom units, there are 26. That's 54%. And 3 bedroom units, there are 6, which is 12%. That gives you the total of 86 bedrooms within the 48 units. I mentioned at a prior hearing, what's clear is that at Chatham's all-town meeting June 12, 2021. Article 18, Chatham citizens voted unanimously for the appropriation of money to quote, acquire 2 parcels on Main for affordable and attainable housing. As we know, the RFP and proposal before us now wasn't part of that vote, and therefore, in these final weeks, further clarification of definitions, distinctions, requirements, and related restrictions within this proposal to affordable, attainable, and workforce housing would be helpful. For example, questions could include, we've talked about local preference, and this proposal is for 70% local preference at the time of initial lease. And after the unit's first lease, it can be leased to non-Chatham residents. Is that correct, she asks. What happens if we're unsuccessful in getting the approval for local preference, question mark. Please explain the following: a subsidy, a grant, a tax credit. Are these local, state, or federal? And here I presume this is a question to Penrose about their submission. In closing, today, I don't know how I will vote when we meet in October, but I do know I have concerns about the project, and the needle needs to move before I cast my vote.
All right, so with that, we are going to now go to the audience that is here, and then we will go to any questions for people online. Who would like to speak that, yes, sir? And as usual, please line up if you want to speak.
Oh, you can't leave.
Welcome.
Thank you. Henry Marcelli, 32 Jesse's Landing. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Rio and Mark for meeting with us, listening to our concerns, walking the property, and coming up with a proposal that really shows that you listened and are trying to accommodate the abutters in the Jesse's Landing area, and the Levitts will speak for themselves, but we do appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that the board has encouraged the developer to sit down and talk with the neighbors, because we talk about the balance that the attorney spoke of earlier, but the abutters do have rights also. And I appreciate the fact that you recognize that and gave us an opportunity to do it. I think the new proposal provides a dense vegetative buffer that enhances the project and will provide a much better screening for the residents on Jesse's Landing. And for clarification, I keep hearing, I should speak as an individual, about these summer residence kind of things where people say, you know, we're not year-round residents. Just for clarification, there are 9 homes in Jesse's Landing. 2 of the homes are occupied year-round. The other 6 homes are owned by Massachusetts residents who come down here weekends, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and use their properties year-round. I am the only house that is a summer resident. I spent 6 months in Florida and 6 months here. So the perception that everybody in Jesse's Landing is a summer resident is kind of not fair. I also recognize and have no issue with the fact that the town board recently decided to change the tax structure for summer residents, where I believe it's 35% more that we'll be paying, and the 35% reduction will go to year-round people, which is fine. But you have to remember another thing. We do not require the services year-round. I do not anyway, because I'm only here 6 months. So there is a balance, and I think that I don't have an issue with it, but I think that people need to respect the fact that I believe, and I know there's some people in the audience, some of the select people who will know the number better than I do. I didn't get a chance to go to the advisory meeting, summer advisory meeting. But if my recollection's correct, I think over 60% of the revenue coming into the town comes from summer residents. Is that correct?
You're on 30 seconds, and we don't answer back.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. But I think Mike can maybe speak to that.
That when they
or
get a
Mr. Dyken.
chance to
Thank you.
speak, they will.
Thank you very
Sure,
much, and
sure.
appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
Feel good about it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, no one lined up, so no, all right. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Rick Levitt, 31 Barn Hill Road. I too want to thank Rio, Mark, and the entire Penrose design team for cooperating in this effort to move an important affordable housing project forward. It's obvious to most of us that public concern with the project, which was expressed here today, stems not from Penrose, but from the town's failure to place an upper limit on the size of the project on small 3-acre properties. But that's a matter for discussion at another board meeting, not this board. My immediate concern is with preserving our privacy and quiet enjoyment of our home, Ella and I, in close proximity to large multifamily apartment buildings. Ella and I and our neighbors, as has been mentioned, met with Rio and Mark on the Main Street property a couple of weeks ago. We discussed the need for a dense vegetative buffer. The proposed plan of an evergreen wall of trees and 6-foot fence separating our properties is excellent. I would like to see the planning schedule and have it and the fence made part of the building permit. Finally, Ella and I have asked that the parking lot for 3 cars adjacent our property be eliminated, and the dumpster relocated to another part of the site in keeping with the RFP's request that traffic flow be internal and away from adjacent neighborhoods. This is a minimal ask based again on our need for privacy and the quiet enjoyment of our home, and I hope you will consider that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Oppenheim, welcome.
David Oppenheim, Absegami Run. I'm here to say I think this has been quite a process. Having been on the Affordable Housing Trust for 2 years, we had to learn a lot. We had consultants come in to teach us the process and at the same time start to deal with getting this going. And we learned a lot. We created the RFP, and I think we ended up making the right choice on the applicant. You've been doing this for almost 6 months now, I think, give or take, and you've been learning the process in a different form than we did. You've had to deal with the abutters, the public input, everything else, and consider all the ramifications and what's real and what's not real, and what are things that you really should deal with and what you shouldn't deal with. And I think you've done a really good job. At the same time, I think Penrose deserves a lot of credit. They have been enormously responsive as far as I'm concerned. I've been to many hearings like this in other towns. I can honestly say I've never seen this many requests in other towns, and I've never seen as much response as Penrose has done. They've tried to accommodate everything reasonable while defending what needs to be done here, because the goal is affordable housing, attainable housing for people in this town. It's a desperate need. We all know what it needs. It is my hope going forward that you experience. A few years back, a group of us bought a house on Kroll Road. We put it together, and it became part of the Marconi thing. And I think one of the things that all of us that were involved with that shared was going by there at night and seeing a family living there and knowing that they had home security, because that's what we're talking about. I think everybody's sitting here on your board, and certainly many of the people think we don't worry about home security. We have home security. Having been an employer in this town, I know Bill Bogdanovich was here and spoke very, very well about the problems that exist. I've employed many people over the years, and home security was something that we as an employer always had to deal with. There's so many times people that work for us year-round didn't know where they were going to live in the summer. And I think that that's an important thing. The community building has been a subject of discussion, and I can't say anything more than what Tracy Cannon said when she wrote her letter about the importance of having a place for people to gather. I think Penrose did a great job reducing the size of it as far as architecturally. I think it looks really nice in the front of the building. In the front of the project, it's a lower thing, and it sort of accents it and softens the entrance into the whole place. So I think that's very well done. I'm hoping that you can close the hearing, whether it's now or the next meeting, and get to writing the conditions that you've all agreed to, and get this thing going so that they can get their tax credits. Penrose has done a marvelous job responding. They're continuing. I would guess as things are going on, they'll continue to respond to things as necessary. And I hope we all sit here in a couple of years or less and can watch knowing that we've helped people, knowing that families will be in there putting
We're
their
going to have
kids,
to,
okay, putting their kids in bedrooms instead of on the couches, cooking on stoves instead of hot
thank you.
plates.
Thank you very much. Ms. McClellan, please step up.
Thank you. Carolyn McClellan, South Chatham.
Welcome.
I'm speaking for myself, not the committee, just so you read the committee's letter, but these are my words. So I hope you can appreciate that the style of the architecture, all in white, surrounding the central green, evokes the classic New England village square. How charming. Breaking up the colors is going to make it look more like a multifamily housing, which is what most people have reported that they don't want it to look like. Keeping it one color, a stately white, will elevate its appearance. The color alone will enhance the cohesiveness and de-escalate the scale, taking it from a development to a desirable neighborhood, a step ahead of every other housing development on the Cape. Chatham really has a chance here to live up to its hype and deliver housing with class and character. Most of us are not professional architects or designers, but you know who is? This guy over here, okay? We're very lucky to have the team from Union Studios working on this project. It's probably the only thing that Mr. Levitt and I agree on at this point. They do a wonderful job. I was absolutely amazed to hear the discord and the rejection of their professional opinion about the color, especially knowing it's keeping with the architectural style and the historical guidelines of a Chatham. It is my expectation that Chatham will deliver a housing development that will live up to our high standards, both aesthetically and in regards to the quality of life of the residents. I feel that Penrose has already made a lot of concessions at this point. I would be very disappointed if you continue to chip away at what's there to accommodate the abutters. I think we've given them the buffer zones. But there seems to be this misconception that it's acceptable to try to get as much as we can out of Penrose, when the reality is that every concession they make diminishes the quality of life for the 48 households that will get to live in these modest apartments. So you're not getting anything out of them. None of them are going to live in this development. In fact, none of us are going to live there. No one who's probably commented on this will ever live there. The future residents are not here to advocate for themselves. So I'd ask you to please consider their interests along with the abutters' request. In regards to the community space, you've already received a poignant letter from Tracy Cannon, the Executive Director of Chatham's Housing Authority, explaining how needed these kinds of spaces are. Personally, I find it hard to reconcile further reducing or eliminating the community space when we're offering to enlarge the buffer zones for the abutters. And finally, I'll just close with change is difficult, and we all have blind spots, but if we're going to evolve and meet the challenges of our time, we need to have the courage to look in the mirror and acknowledge the disconnect between our actions and our words. Many of us express concerns for the current housing crisis, yet fail to see our own bias as a contributing factor and as an obstacle to real solutions. So please, let's pause for a moment and truly consider this thing we call character, the thing we're so desperate to preserve. We need to be cognizant of the fact that the reality is that our character will ultimately be defined by our actions, not the height of our buildings or the density of our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Shell, welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying I want to offer my thanks to this board.
Can you just give your name and address for the record, please?
I thought I did. Mike
No,
Schell,
I said your name.
It was an echo, sorry. Mike Schell, Chatham. I want to start by saying thank you to the board. I know this has been a difficult, trying, extended, challenging effort on your part. I don't think it's any secret that I wish you had done it faster and more in one direction and all the rest of it. But having said that, I know you've had a tough job to do, so I want to say thank you for that. I also want to say about this project, it delivers to Chatham 48 units of housing that we will have families living in. Specifically, 32, I believe, are affordable in the classic sense of that term, and 16 of them are attainable. And I also want to mention or refer to the comment that David Oppenheim made, kids not only in bedrooms, but kids in our schools. We need to have kids in the schools. I'm not going to guess as to how many kids this can bring to the community, but I am sure it is going to be a very significant number, and I believe that should be a big deal for you. Finally, I just want to mention, I have my own metric of what we call, what has been referred to as economic feasibility. I'm looking at I'm comparing this proposal with the two others that we got way back when it was in April, I guess, of '24. The other two, this one offers to give us money back for the land that we are giving them. Everything else they are bringing to the party through financing from other sources. The other two, in simplest terms, one of them offered us, I believe it was about 42 units, and they needed from Chatham, in order to complete that project, around $4 million of subsidy from us. The third one was only 36 units, and they wanted $5.5 million from Chatham, and they wanted they were going to need another $1.5 million from some other source, likely the state. To me, that tells me that they have sharpened their pencils. They are giving us value that, by comparison, is superior to what was provided in an open process in which there was an open competition. So from my perspective, I think they've done a phenomenal job. They've stuck with you. They've worked with you. They've worked with the abutters. I like everybody else. I hope you will close the hearing and move on to the mechanics of issuing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Brian Phillips, you're up next. Welcome.
All right, for the record, Brian Phillips, 374 Orleans Road, and I do need affordable housing, for the record. My first concern, real serious, is that the lack of handicap accessibility kind of demonstrates a lack of empathy and understanding our demographics. We have a very large senior population with mobility issues, so having like a parent or a grandparent over for dinner would be very difficult if they have mobility issues. So I think there should be elevators in all of the buildings. The other is the low-level water alarm went off 6 times last month, and that is under strict water restrictions. It's usually around 12 to 15 times. This complex is going to use between 8,000 to 10,000 gallons of water a day. What is that going to do to our water supply? Even if for some reason we could support that water usage, it would take away from projects we should be doing, like home ownership. Penrose gets a 0% interest loan on the Buckley property land, which I don't think they have to pay monthly payments. They get like $23 million from the state to build this project. They have prevailing wages exemption that got snuck through town meeting. So why do taxpayers have to pay prevailing wages for projects like schools, but for a for-profit corporation doesn't? That's state funded. So Penrose pretty much doesn't have to pay for anything, but gets to collect the rent on 48 units, which around 30%, it being over $3,000 a month. Chatham's market rate for a 2-bedroom is about $1,800 a month. So why is Penrose able to charge $3,000 if you are 110% AMI? Other than Dick Cheney using Halliburton to rebuild the Middle East, this is the biggest scam I have ever seen. This project does not benefit Chatham, and it hurts it. The only people benefiting from this project is Penrose and a couple employers who need cheap source of labor. It's tough for me to calculate how much Penrose will be collecting each month because the AMI keeps changing, but it's about $100,000 to $120,000 a month. Instead of that money going towards a giant corporation and investors, that money could be going to citizens of this town so they could gain wealth through the equity of their home if we had had a fair RFP process. There was no reason to not do the hack ownership project. Chatham has the money in the Attainable and Affordable Trust to do the project, so no new money would have been asked at town meeting. A claim in a ZBA meeting was made that not having a pool at your beachfront property was a hardship. If that's a hardship, what is it when you do hard, low-paying jobs like banging nails, digging ditches, flipping burgers,
5
baiting lobster
seconds, just
traps,
so you know.
being a nurse at Liberty Commons to provide for your
And
family,
in conclusion,
and not having the opportunity to own a home in this town? Thank you.
thank you, thank you. I don't see anybody else, so I am now, oh, I'm sorry. My contacts only get me so far in life. Yes, please, welcome, Leslie Sheenberger.
Thank you. Leslie Schneeberger, 392 Main Street. I really appreciate the consideration the board has given to neighbors' requests to pedestrian safety and the development's aesthetics. I've heard some of the proponents cite the adage, "Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good." I contend that this statement actually undersells what's been achieved here. The development as now presented, I think, is an excellent solution that'll provide housing for upward of 90 residents in a town where the majority of large structures are single-family. This is a result of a team of specialists with real-world experience responding to a detailed RFP. When you provide specifications to an AI-driven application and the initial response doesn't meet your expectations, you refine the criteria. I'd say that mirrors exactly what's been happening here by the members of the ZBA and the public, except that it's been done to real-world, real people who have experience to react. Penrose's response balances the needs of future residents with the needs of our current residents. The landscape design creates a well-vegetated buffer between the residences and abutting properties while maintaining small backyards for each unit. The central green, which will serve as outdoor communal space with play and picnic areas, preserves existing mature trees, quite a few, and adds even more. It's unfortunate that the town's previous housing initiative at Lake Street didn't incorporate or consider residents' quality of life in that same thoughtful way. I've heard comments about the height and the siding. It's easy to assume that white cedar shingles and 1.5-story capes are the most fitting aesthetic for a town. I argue that Chatham's most historic and prominent landmarks are often the buildings that have feature clapboard siding and are often the tallest. I recommend taking a slow drive from Harwich Port to Chatham Light, as any visitor might, and observe how many structures are over 30 feet tall, how many of those have clapboard siding, and are located in very close proximity to the street. Quite often, these large towns are also the ones that ironically have been converted to multifamily, to duplexes, inns, and other type of structures. I suggest siding and roofing colors be modest in their variation. At least they may appear contrived and resemble unthoughtful, kind of large multifamily buildings of the suburbs of Boston. This development is not anything like that. I believe the community building has been misunderstood and really should be described as a needed clubhouse that will house staff, maintenance, amenities for the property, and gathering spaces for celebrations like birthdays, anniversaries, things that the small homes cannot fit. The future residents of this development will certainly still continue to frequent our town's community center for its broader offerings. Development and change are difficult to envision, and challenge can be hard to accept. If this property were being subdivided, I think we'd hear just as many concerns and complaints. However, I have no fear of this development would become an eyesore to our town. Rather, I believe it'll quickly dissolve into the periphery of our
And I'm going to have
along Route 28.
to ask you to conclude.
While its structures and their parking and their landscape fade from view, the contributions of its residents, schools, businesses.
All right,
and
thank you very much.
All community will continue.
Next. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. Bill Bystrom, Chatham. I want to thank you for your service. It's a lot of work, I understand that. If I drive around Chatham, I see a lot of the conditions that people have complained about. It doesn't seem to adversely affect the quality of life in Chatham or the valuation of the town. The town, I believe, is evaluated now currently at $12.8 billion. So it seems that is going up. As I look around and I see people that have served on various building committees, Mr. Dykens, Mr. Wickham, myself, at least one of us have been on every building committee this town has had since 2000. whether it be the Lake Street project, which is affordable housing, the community center, the DPW building, the police station, the fire station, this town hall annex, or Monomoy Regional High School. And it's the consensus, I think, of all of us that there are many, many real positive benefits that the community would get from endorsing the Penrose project, and that would increase the quality of life for the community. And in conclusion, I'd just like to take a brief moment and read the concluding paragraph from today's Cape Cod Chronicle, and it affects affordable housing and attainable housing in Chatham. When it comes to affordable and attainable housing, the question of character isn't about parking, traffic, or what kind of cedar shingles we'd like to see. It's a fundamental question of who we would want to be. Instead of looking at a project as too dense, look at the potential it might provide for housing more families. Instead of fretting over how many safety workers, instead of fretting over how many more cars a project might add to our roads, think about how many teachers, policemen, service employees it might house. The ability to allow some of these omitted annoyances for a greater cause shows really great community character. And that's what Chatham's all about. Chatham's a wonderful place to live. We all like living here. And the reason we like living here is because of the people that inhabit it. This will give us a chance to add more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You are next. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. David Whitcomb, 41 Indian Trail, West Chatham. I'm going to try to say a few things that haven't been said because I know you've been to several meetings, and I just would like to give my opinion. Back in 2002, this same sort of project began. The town bought 1.42 acres from the housing authority bought from the town 1.42 acres to add to the 5 acres that we had bought. The Chatham Housing Authority bought in 1985, and we started building the Lake Street project, which was the last project that went before the ZBA for a 40B, and was the last project that had any significant addition to affordable housing in the town. Since then, we looked at all the town land. We have no land to build affordable housing. We looked at the MCI property, we looked at several properties, the Middle Road property, to no avail. So we went out to bid for land to build affordable housing, and this is what we've come up with. So in 22 years, we had 47 units at Lake Street, 10, I think, or so units of Habitat for Humanity, a couple at MCI property. So maybe 60 units altogether in the last 22 years of affordable housing. We have an opportunity, you have an opportunity to okay this. I hope you do that. I'd hate to go another 4 or 5 years on a project that we've spent on this particular project. So in ending, I believe the compromises and concessions that have been made during the 40B process make this project more beneficial to the town of Chatham than not. I encourage the ZBA to support the Penrose project and retain the viability of everyone, of the year-round community in Chatham. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there's nobody else in the audience, I don't think I'm missing anyone at this juncture. I'm going to take the two online, Elaine Gibbs and then Stephen Buckley. And then after that, we're going to take a short break and come back and talk to Penrose again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Elaine Gibbs Chatham. I ask that you visualize this project from the viewpoint of Main Street, not from the renderings provided. Virtually all of the 3 acres will in fact be clear cut from Main Street back. The renderings relied on show mature landscaping, which none of us will see in our lifetimes. 90% of the proposed plantings are deciduous trees and shrubs that will be bare 5 months of the year. The 9 residential buildings are huge. The larger ones are actually 2/3 the size of the brick portion of the community center and will all be seen from the road year-round. Penrose keeps comparing this project to Nauset Green, which they built, which is 6 miles north of the Orleans Rotary on a side road with 6 units per acre versus 16 per acre at 1533. 1533 is located on a heavily traveled state road and our main access to all of Chatham. 1533 has a potential occupancy capacity of 172 to 200 tenants based on the bedrooms. The 95 to 100 projected based on Nauset is totally unrealistic for Chatham. West Chatham has no grocery stores, no pediatrician, no pharmacy, and no bank, requiring cars for work and for very basic necessities of life. To restrict the parking to 1.252 cars per unit, again, based on Nauset Green, is totally insufficient. Parking should be assigned near each unit and 2 spaces per unit. We have to consider the quality of life of the people that are going to be living here. Family isn't defined by state agencies and could therefore be 6 or more unrelated individuals in a 3-bedroom, in addition to allowing each temporary visitor up to 14 days to stay there, taking up unassigned parking. In terms of local preference, despite claims that 70% of the units will likely be local preference, that isn't determined by the state until after the project is completed. Based on the AMIs, I don't believe teachers, town employees, including police and fire, will likely even qualify financially, especially if it is a 2-person income home. The annual report of town salaries, which I've advised the Affordable Housing Trust to look at.
Just going to give
will
you a
confirm that.
20-second warning, ma'am, just so you know.
All right, I think the test should be if we want our children or grandchildren living here in terms of the quality of life we should expect. Once the lot is bulldozed, there's no turning back, and there will be a lot of regret and a lot of finger pointing. This is not conducive to children. And I would.
And thank you very much. We're going to go to Steve Buckley now, sir. Just make sure you turn your volume up best you can.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I wanted to respond to the statement that about cedar shingle siding, in which Penrose said in their letter of September 10th. Unfortunately, cedar shingles present financial, maintenance, and operational fire safety and insurance issues that cannot be reasonably supported in an affordable housing development in which the government subsidies are being provided to support the creation of such housing. And I had said before in previous meetings, if you can't do real wood, then use synthetic. Right now, all the siding, even the clapboard siding, it's not wood, it's synthetic. So I believe, unless I would like to put forth that essentially the only thing that would change from synthetic cedar shingle is the appearance. It's virtually the same cost, and I'm assuming if it's made out of the same material, then any type of fire safety and insurance would be virtually the same, and it would last just as long as the synthetic clapboard siding. So if they're truly saying that it's unfortunate that they can't use cedar shingles, then if we can address the idea that it doesn't have to be wood, then we can take away that reservation and they can put it in and it'll look like Chatham. It'll fit in like Chatham. That's one. By selling the property to the town, I wanted this to look like a housing project that would fit in with Chatham. And the look of, even if it's mixed, 50% cedar shingles, that's typically what happens. A lot of houses have one side with clapboard and the other 3 sides are cedar shingles. And that's the type of look that I think would break it up. And also, by the way, provide some, if you'll be less apt to see gray to the back of these buildings from the abutters. If you're trying to screen, then white is going to stand out a lot more between the trees and the screening than gray. So it'll actually provide some, from the abutters' point of view, I would think, be less obvious that there's a building on the other side of those trees. And so anyway, I have a link that I would like to share.
Just
We
going to
won't
give
show
you
it
your
now.
20-second warning, like basketball.
Okay. I provided Sarah
You
with a
heard that,
link
right?
to yes, I heard it. Thank
Great.
you. A link that I would like to be put in the minutes so that the board and other people can see and watch a video of how closely it looks to the real thing. You actually have to walk up and touch it to know that it's not silver gray cedar shingles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That appears to conclude public comment for today. So we are going to take a short break, come back no later than 3:38, and we'll see you then. We are back. Zoning Board of Appeals, September 18th, 2025. And we're going to continue the meeting. And this is the portion where Penrose responds to what they've heard from the public and the letters.
Great, thank you. Rio from Penrose again. So first comment I'd like to address from Mr. and Mrs. Levitt, some concerns about the dumpster. Which are totally reasonable, we get it, the dumpster near their property. So we're trying to accommodate it as best we can. We had previously pulled it back off the property, so we push it farther back, setting it farther from the property borderline. We've reduced those spaces in that area from 8 to 3, which also allowed us to push our building farther away from his property as well. Some things to note about the dumpster: we're going to enclose it in a minimum of 6-foot-high stockade wood fencing. And in addition to that, we have what Mark was showing earlier in the presentation, a new staggered line of evergreen screening. And this is in addition to the already substantial vegetation at that property border to begin with, which will stay. Also noting that the dumpster is at a lower elevation too. So all of those things we think will obscure the building, so I think it will have little visual impact. They also had concerns about the sound impact. I think all of those things help reduce the sound impact as well. Also, we had regrouped with our director of property maintenance for the whole Penrose management organization. And for this style dumpster, for these number of units, it's anticipated that the pickup service would be twice a week, and it takes the truck approximately 5 minutes to back in, hook it up to the dumpster and flip it into the back and then lay it back down. So that, the noise part, which, the beeping of a truck and a large truck moving in, that would be for a total of approximately 10 minutes a week. Also, there's some concerns too about pests and pest control. This falls into what we've been talking about, professional, Class A type property management. We'll have maintenance staff on site, which will ensure that people aren't leaving trash outside the dumpster near it or dumping things that aren't supposed to be dumped. We'll also be contracting with a local pest control vendor year-round for regular pest control services. So we think we have a really good plan to mitigate all these impacts: visual, sound, and concerns about pests. So I think the net effect there is a screened, quiet as much as it can be, and a well-maintained trash removal area. Next, I'd like to address, and there were a bunch of comments here. I'm going to go around Virginia Fenwick's comments from her letter. I think I'll just start off with her comments about the cedar shingles and the copper lighting, which are really the same issue, and that we find them not supportable. A lot of those features are beautiful, but they're cost prohibitive, and putting money into that shifts those dollars away, which would go into the units and the unit interiors, which we think would probably lessen the quality of life for the residents living there. However, we can relook at two things for her. We could look at coming up with some light poles that are less contemporary. They won't be copper, but maybe they're more fitting in with Chatham architecture and Chatham design, and maybe more nautical theme type features, poles. So we can look at that. And I would also like to note, I think maybe it wasn't clear, and I believe Mr. Buckley had mentioned other synthetic versions of cedar shingles. So we currently have our show cementitious, not vinyl, cementitious, not cedar shingles, on the first and second floors, on the sides of several of the buildings, also on the back of several buildings. So we think that that's a nice design feature that I think will, hopefully that Mrs. Fenwick will accept. Other items from her comments are the local preferences and the justifications. That is out of our control. It's up to HLC. However, I will say that at Village at Nassau Green and at Fair in Orleans, two very similar projects, we were able to get the max 70% local preference on both. So we're highly confident we'd be able to get it here. It will need information from the town. The town will be responsible for justifying to the state the need for that, and that's something we can help with. We helped Orleans with that, and we helped Eastham with that, where we were successful. We were also successful in Wareham. And the Cape communities, because of the housing crisis, they have a built-in justification right there. It is just for the lease up, but however, that doesn't mean that Chatham residents aren't going to be able to rent these units if they don't make it through the initial lottery preference. Right now at Village at Nassau Green, most of the folks that have moved in recently, I believe all of them that have moved in recently off the wait list, have all been from Eastham. So it will be similar here, I think. With the demographics of our lottery applications in Orleans, it was overwhelmingly folks from Orleans and the lower and outer Cape that applied. Other comments, she had comments about the management building.
I noticed one error in that, and that you might not have, I didn't notice it. It was brought to my attention from somebody a lot smarter than me, that even if you did what she asked for that, and we're not saying that it's not a valid request, it wouldn't actually change the setback of the street. You probably already picked that right up, but we picked it up too. But that doesn't mean that the rest of what she talks about isn't still a valid concern. It just wouldn't alleviate the front setback.
Got it.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, continue, thank you.
Okay, the management building, this is an example of something we had pushed really strongly for because we, from our experience building these types of projects, we felt this was what we needed to be able to professionally manage it. We have, I'm sure folks are probably very familiar with the floor plan by now, but just to go over it again, we have a maintenance shop, maintenance storage. We have the property manager's office, a full-time property manager. It'll be a full-time maintenance technician as well. The waiting room for applicants or residents who are waiting to meet with the manager. We have file storage rooms, which is necessary for tax credit applications. We have a lot of sensitive personal information that has to be secured. So those rooms are a requirement. We have the social services office, which is also something we feel, 100% feel we need to professionally manage this. And this is a person that we also project will be shared with the Meeting House property. The conference room is used for the manager to interview with prospective applicants. That's also used as the office for the regional director of property management, who will be making periodic visits to the property. That's another level of this being professionally managed. We have a higher level executive person come in frequently to oversee what's happening at the property to make sure it's being managed by the folks on site to an acceptable level. And and the common room, of course. So this common room, we know it's used as function for the residents, for birthdays, after-school programs. It's also an area of refuge. There'll be a generator to this building, and times when the power goes out, all the residents can come to this common room. They'll have electricity, hot water, have a place to stay if needed, if they would like, until the power comes back on.
She specifically asked you a few things with that, and I feel compelled to ask you to address them. Do you see, it says, why don't you remove it, which I think you just responded because you think you need it. Relocate to the Meeting House project, or move it to the back, because in her opinion, the streetscape would be better served without that right front and center. So can you just at least respond to that?
Sure,
Thanks.
of course. So moving it back would reduce the presence on the street, but what it would also do is it would push back into what we think Crowley Cottrell did an amazing job with this, with very limited space, this green space amenity area, recreational area. So we talk about trade-offs here, create a little more setback up there, and would significantly impact the main recreational area for the entire community. It also would mean that we'd have to get rid of a bunch of those existing mature trees that we had designed around purposely to try to preserve. We don't think the trade-offs are worth that, pushing it back, to reduce that recreational space.
She meant
lose those
moving it,
trees.
no, she meant moving it to the back of the site. That's what it says. This is just addressing what she said. Relocated to Meeting House, so address that in a moment. Move to the back of Main Street project as either the current proposed building or redesign it within the existing buildings along the southern end of the property. So in other words, she's saying to move it way in the back. Because you talked about, you have to admit, you talked about Meeting House and that office being in the back, and you like that idea. So it's
Well,
caused some cognitive dissonance there.
I didn't say we liked that idea. I said that was an extremely difficult site. And the reason we could do it without a management space like this is because it would be shared with here. They would have access to here. They would have access to the staff who were able to put here. If we looked at Meeting House all on its own, we would have to come in with a larger management building and a lot more units. And that site isn't physically capable of handling it. So we couldn't do it. I think I also mentioned we much prefer our management buildings to be at the front entrance because that's where people come in. New applicants come in, they know right away where to go to see the manager. Same with visitors. It also provides, I think Union did a great job with the layout here of providing in an area and designing around it so where the property manager in her office has eyes on everything that's going on in the property. Eyes on the street, people coming in, eyes on the recreational area, and eyes basically on the whole periphery of what's going on. It's really perfect from a site security perspective, which is why we originally and have always had it at its current location.
Okay, I think
There was another
you addressed
question.
that.
Sorry.
We're just trying to make sure that you address,
Sure,
just out
of
of
course.
courtesy. And, okay, you want to continue, like it seems like the next whopper is density?
Okay.
Oh, eliminating
Because
Oh, eliminating a building?
at a different meeting, she mentioned that, and women don't like to be ignored. And I'm asking you to respond to her, and then we'll take that up later in terms of if any of the rest of us agree with it. But she's asking you right here to tell us why you can't cut it down 6 units. She's asking you.
I think from the very beginning at the RFP stage, this has been the number of units that we've said we've needed in order to professionally manage this property with all the things that, like pest control that we must mention, the full-time property manager, full-time maintenance person. And for us, the unit count is even more important than the bedroom count to a certain extent, because that number of units is really needed to support the full-time maintenance person and full-time property manager.
So what she says in her document, so like I said, that wasn't addressed in subsequent revisions, and I remain curious, this is Virginia Fenwick, what that would do to the economics of the Penrose proposal. You can either respond to that now or maybe later, it's up to you, but you know what she's asking.
Yes, I think we'd be curious to know
Sure.
the rest of the board's
Okay.
comments.
Yeah, we can table that. Okay, go ahead.
Anything else? I think that's it.
No, I think that's it for responses that we had for what we just heard in the public comments.
You know that question that she brought up in the very at the end? For example, questions include about, I'll just go with one. Please explain the following: a subsidy, a grant, a tax credit. If it's in our lane to ask that, if you could kindly respond. If you think it's not in our lane to ask that, then just tell us it's not in your lane.
She wanted to know that and how it related to this project.
Sure. So this project, so projects like this, which have income restrictions and rent restrictions, so the folks who move in can't make an income above a certain level, and the owner can't charge them a rent above a certain level. So a lot of these projects have a lot less cash flow than a market rate development. So they're not able to raise the funds necessary to get it developed, because there's restrictions on revenue and then there's restrictions on the sale too at the end. So the primary, so you can't finance these with just conventional financing, which would be equity of some sort or a conventional bank loan. It would never pencil out. So there's gaps in the development budget, what you could raise versus the cost to build it. So this is where the subsidies come in. They're financial incentives, taxpayer-funded incentives to get to fill those budget gaps so projects like this have enough funds to get built. The primary subsidy that will fund this project and funds most of these projects is the low-income housing tax credit, which is a federal program where if you have a certain amount of units at a certain level of income and rent restrictions, you qualify for these tax credits. You get awarded them, even though they're federal, you get awarded them through the state, through a competitive process. The owner-developer sells those tax credits, raises the money from that to help build the project. But those usually are not enough, and especially over the past 5 years are definitely not enough. We're very fortunate that we live in a state like Massachusetts that has come to the table with lots of state-funded subsidies to help fill these gaps, which are still left after the low-income housing tax credits. So there's the state has their own state low-income housing tax credit. They also provide home funds, affordable housing trust funds, housing stabilization funds. There's a lot of different funding that will have to go together to cobble all the pieces to get a budget that balances. And that's why, I talked about earlier about the sort of three factors we consider when making changes. One being, is it improve the residents' quality of life? The other one, does it help us, can this be professionally managed? Does it help us in that regard? And then the third one, which we're sort of talking about now, is will these be competitive for state subsidies and resources? Because there's a lot of projects that need to be built. There's a limited amount of these resources available for projects. So we need to be as competitive as possible, because the state looks at it as, you know, what's a responsible use of taxpayers' funding, which was the issue we kind of brought up about the cedar shingles and the copper light poles. So we would go after all sorts of these funds, including, and what we've done on the Cape, CPC funds. And in fact, we actually submitted CPC applications for this project to the town of Brewster and Wellfleet to get funds from them as well. Over the past 5 years, costs have skyrocketed for many different reasons. So we've needed to bring more and more different funding sources, these funding sources that don't expect a return on investment or a certain interest on it, to help get these projects built. So that's why having to be competitive in getting these resources is so necessary. Because if we're not, we don't get the resources, a project can't get built.
Okay, I think that was pretty helpful. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for doing that. What else do you want to respond to? Anything else?
I think we look forward to the board's comments.
Yep, sure, okay, and we will do that now. I'm going to start with Mr. Veach. He's been a fan of yours from the beginning.
Geez, I've thought about asking to go last, but I don't need to, really. I'll just say this is true. So I've been a fan from the beginning because I'd like to think, at least I'd like to believe, that my primary concern here has been for the prospective occupants of these spaces. And the being welcoming to these folks who are perhaps already members of our community, others who will become members of our community, and absolutely recognizing the extreme need and for this type of housing, especially here in Chatham itself. So I've always had that's primary in my mind, and my understanding is that's one of the balancing, or one of the main balancing features that we need to consider in terms of our consideration with 40B. So I also, perhaps differently than some other folks here in the room, find that I'm kind of unabashedly have a little more faith in the process that's taken place up to this point. And I also put, and have no reason not to put, a great deal of faith in what Penrose and their team has responded to and done and answered. I'm not sure some of the changes that have been made I'm happy about necessarily, but if they say to me that this meets their criteria for quality of life for the applicants, I'm good with that. So that's just in general what I'd like to say. Specifically, I want to reiterate that with respect to the building heights, that I think they've responded quite well to that. I want to just clarify as well. I mentioned this to Carolyn in the back on break, because one of the lines in the letter from the Housing Partnership talked about the ceiling heights and all. And I'd like to just clarify that that Penrose responded in those C-type buildings, the 2.5-story buildings. I recognize that because they were able to, on the other buildings, to lower the roof pitch and still keep it at a traditional height, but bring them down so that meet the height requirement. In the 2.5-story buildings, the roof pitch was not as much. They were not going to be able to do that as much. However, they did have, in the initial plans that were presented to us, there were the ceilings that were proposed went in the second floor were proposed at like 9 feet, and I'm not sure why that was, but whatever. What I saw there, and which they very graciously responded to, was the opportunity to take that down to the 8 feet plus or minus, which were on the other floors. So I just want to call out that they did do that, and they did bring the height of the buildings down by a foot, but those buildings still, because of the way we define building height, are still asking for and seeking the waivers. I don't think, we've had other letter writers now say, and I'm in agreement with that, when this project is all said and done, and those buildings are there as they've been presented, which I hope will be the case, I don't think anybody's going to be looking at that saying these buildings are too tall. This is too much. It's been too much. We were wrong. We've been wrong about that all along. I don't think they're going to stand out in that way. So, it sounds like, Virginia, I can't speak for her, but it sounds like she's been okay. She's reached the point of being okay with the heights of the buildings. I don't know, I'm just going to throw this out, I don't know, talking about and the willingness to increase the setback in the rear of the property. And so what I will applaud with that is it does seem to be an opportunity to save some more existing trees. And I think to the degree they've done more of that than what they started with, they've done a very good job of that. And especially along that line there. But I do sort of wonder, and looking at the situation, some of the photographs and things that were mentioned on, is I don't know how much some of those trees are at risk because of the way the topography was left after the development of Jesse's Landing. And I don't know, maybe some of the Jesse's Landing folks might be willing to put up some retaining walls on their property so that the spillover and runoff and things isn't going on to this property and perhaps endangering some of the existing trees. The other thing that I've tried to be attuned to and some of the things that we've asked about and has been mentioned as legislation is how much are we asking that we don't ask of other developers? How much have we been pushing these guys on situations that we would not even get to ask other developers to make concessions on? So all things considered, and then now I don't know, again, of the most latest things, I hear Thad Eldridge's comments about a bus turnout, but I would assume anything regarding a bus turnout would be same kind of answer about the state. That's up to the state, and it might be a good idea. The only other thing that I'd like to say that when I look at the drawings and the renderings and things, and specifically in talking about the front setback, and Jenny's concerns about the setback to the road and all, is I had also picked up on that were they even to move that building back, it wouldn't solve because the other setbacks to the when they realized they had to be to the stoops of the other two buildings, not the corners, that reduced or actually increased the waiver ask. But I would like to point out that just to the going further to the west of us and on the north side of this is a proposal that the planning board put before and was not able to get the required 2/3 vote, but they had more than a majority of town meeting vote for, is they've developed this plan to do to redo the West Chatham Village Center zoning. And they're trying to adopt this form-based design of zoning that we really haven't had in Chatham. But one of the things in reading through that proposal and what the intent of it is specifically to bring the buildings up closer to the street and provide kind of like a street wall, as you might find in downtown Chatham, which everyone looks at that as, God, this is what we want. So I'm not at all concerned about the waivers to the property line on the street. if this zoning matter does manage to pass, or at some point when it will pass, if it passes in the form that was presented at town meeting, they actually are trying to say that they're trying to move so that the faces of buildings move to the zone from between 10 and 20 feet from the property line. They're trying to bring the line of buildings into that zone. So these buildings would be maybe slightly forward of what that is, but not much. So I think it'll fit. I don't think there's any question as presented that it won't fit in either with that future zoning or the existing zoning that's on the street. And I've spent some time as a member of the HBDC and Main Street Design Advisory Committee, various other things. So I have had some experience in trying to evaluate proposals in their physical nature. And these are the things that I see. I don't see problems there in that regard. And then as far as density, and I know, and I think Jane's correct, I don't think that, I'm not sure that we really heard pointed responses to when she suggested dropping that building. But I did say that I thought in all the material that we have that we're looking at that talks about the creation of 40B and what it's about and why it's there, density is probably the first thing that needs to be asked for, is greater density. And I don't think, and I also am not, without going back into all the details, but it seems to me that the RFPs that went out they set a maximum, and that's what the responses were. So I just think the process has worked very well to get.
The other fella on the other end is to mix things up.
Well, I just have a few questions, I guess, and they may have already been answered and addressed a while ago, but maybe I forgot. And these are in no particular order. The signage that you mentioned in the front at each entrance, it's going to be lit? Is it on some sort of a timer, maybe go off at midnight or something, or is it going to be on all night? Do you know?
So they only light the face of the sign, so residents may be coming at all times of the day. So it is meant to be, I guess, is it timed like during the day? Photo cell. It's photo cell, so during the day, it's gonna go off, yeah.
So it's like dawn to dusk, it'll be on. Okay. You mentioned the dumpsters and the relocations and the sizes of the dumpsters and things. What are you doing to encourage recycling?
We always have, so that enclosure will include areas for recyclables as well. That's standard for us, it's standard in almost every community. We'll have, sometimes we have separate recycles in buildings, like a separate chute, but here, because they're all separate entrance townhomes, it would be the same as the trash. So where you see the two dumpster locations, those are also recycle locations as well. It would be in a separate bin instead of the large trash dumpster.
And in terms of like encouraging, this is the reason why the resident service coordinator role is something that we like to have, because if there's like a Chatham Day of Recycling, this person would be the one that would help coordinate an event in the community room to hand out materials or do encouraging like Earth Day events. So that sort of programming and those kind of activities that we want to encourage people to adopt, that's kind of one of the roles that the resident service coordinator can play.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, and this may have been addressed again, but do these buildings have basements?
No basements.
All right, so so there's no secure area for people to keep their stuff, because if families with 1 or 2 kids have stuff, where are they gonna put it?
yeah. Skis, maybe, a bicycle. That's a great question. So we have designed exterior storage. So you see these little bump outs here at every building. There's exterior storage here, here, exterior storage here. So it's not accessible from their unit. They have to walk out and go around it. But we have sizable storage rooms there for Christmas decorations, bicycles. Might not fit a kayak, but we could always put straps on the side of the building.
Are they
put them there.
individual or is it shared?
Individual,
Okay,
one for each unit.
okay. And they're to the exterior, on the exterior of the building?
That's right.
Okay. So then, with the absence of a basement, there's no conventional boilers or furnaces for heat, so I'm assuming you're going to use heat pumps?
Correct.
For HVAC. Where is that equipment? Because I haven't seen that on any of the drawings.
That's correct. We haven't gotten to that level of design yet. So the condensers will be located either onto the building or at grade.
There'll have to be one for each unit.
That's right.
Correct?
Yes.
All
Yeah,
right, well,
likely would be around here. We'd put them up on like a platform, put a screening around it. We never typically put on roofs because people don't like it and they're much harder to service. And we don't like them near the front doors either, so they're usually on the sides where there's not the exterior storage.
I know you have some. I'm wondering if it's not going to be enough bike racks. Because of the limited number of parking spaces, I'm assuming a lot of these people or some people don't have cars or access to cars, so they're going to have bikes or some kind of motorized scooters. We see them every day. What provisions are you making for what's probably going to be a large amount of bicycles or non-car vehicles?
We will include bike racks. In fact, we're obligated to under the state subsidy programs that we'll be accessing. We usually go above and beyond what's required. I think they usually require one covered bike rack. We usually, Mark, I don't believe we currently show bike rack locations in the current drawings. But typically, there would be one or two around the management building, and then every couple of units would be smaller ones. And they'd be the ones that would be kind of bolted into the concrete platforms, not, the ones you can move around. They'd be secure, heavy-duty ones.
Currently, they're located here, but there's also opportunities for storage for the bikes as well.
No, because, I don't think people are going to put them in their storage unit. I think they're going to be just out.
Yes.
Wherever they can put them. Okay. Is there any sort of, I don't know what to call it, tenant personalization? Can they make any changes to these buildings, paint their front door or something? Is there any control over that, or do they have any sort of leeway to make any kind of changes to their unit?
Not on the exterior. And I don't think on the interior, but I'm not 100% on that. I would have to get back to you after circling up with our management folks, but definitely not on the exterior. Like painting anything or hanging like satellites sometimes or stuff like that. That's all prohibited.
And usually we let tenants make changes only if it's a reasonable accommodation for like something related to a health need, something related to disability.
Okay.
Oh, like changing carpet to vinyl plank flooring or something if they're in a wheelchair.
Gotcha. Okay. That's good. Oh, one more thing. If and when this gets started, do you have any sort of schedule for how long this is going to take start to finish to complete?
Yeah, we have a general contractor has at this, and this is very preliminary stages, of course, but estimated as 16-month construction schedule. And sometimes that depends on when you get started, right? So if you get started because the first work is usually the earthwork, excavating, which you can do any time of year, but the pouring of the foundations can be difficult in the winter when it's cold and the ground gets frozen, which can prolong and cause a longer construction. So, but approximately 16 months it would take to fully complete this.
And that's working through the year, because we have summertime restrictions here normally. So is that another waiver that you're going to have to apply for?
It's not a waiver because the town doesn't have those restrictions, we do. The town just, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Okay. And we have no intention of doing that, I guess?
I'm not going to speak for the future, you know, but
Okay, thank you.
it's not a waiver though, so don't worry.
And just on the bike rack issue, one of the things that our property management will actively be doing is making sure that residents are complying with their lease, putting their bikes where they should be. If there needs to be more bike racks on the site, that's something that our property management and maintenance folks can easily order and install more. So it's something that we can adjust that over time also.
Thank you.
Lee? And then we'll go to Paul, just so you know, you're up next, Paul.
Well, most of my questions have been addressed. I had several on the dumpsters and the recycling as well. So just generally, I want to say that I think this has been a very valuable process. I think that everyone is in agreement that we have a better plan than what we started with. And I really feel like you guys, Penrose, have been very accommodating. I appreciate you working with the abutters. I appreciate you listening to what we've had to say. And I think this is going to be great for Chatham. I'm not concerned with the height. I'm not concerned with the density. As Mr. Veach said, this is part of the 40B thing. I mean, that's what happens when you are trying to work with a 40B application. And when it comes to the look of the buildings, I actually took a walk a couple days ago from Chatham Light into the town of Chatham, and I noticed a lot of these historic buildings close to the street, white siding, only siding, tall buildings, and they're beautiful. So I think this will fit in. I think we've done a good job as a board, and I think you guys have done a good job listening to us as well. Let me see if there's any other. I appreciate you. Oh, I did have a question about the signs, if there are two. They will be parallel to Main Street, correct? They will not be perpendicular. Parallel to Main.
Well, I think it's currently shown, Mark, I believe they're parallel.
Parallel to Main.
Yeah.
They're parallel. I'm not seeing them right now.
The-
Oh, is
the
it
little red,
The
yeah.
orange, yeah.
the orange? Got it.
Parallel to Main. So therefore, one-sided.
One side.
One-sided, yeah.
And you don't have to answer this, but do you have a name in mind?
Well, I think
You
right
don't have
now
to-
it's under the it's part of the contract of the sale of the property to the town.
Okay.
That the property be named Buckley Gardens.
Oh, yes, I did hear that at one point. Okay. And I think the key to it all will be the landscaping. I think the fact that you are willing to save a lot of trees, not clear cut, heavily plant is going to be the key to this. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, Paul, do you want to go next, or do you want me to come to this side?
Either way, whatever is convenient for you is fine. I don't mind going ahead now.
All right.
I still am gathering information, and there are a few questions I had. I've asked, I think, on 2 different occasions at separate hearings, what you project to have for children at this location, and I haven't yet gotten an answer.
Sure. Apologies if you haven't gotten that answer yet. We have a significant number of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms here, which is what the town wanted for families. And so what we've seen at Village at Nassau Green, which we've been using as an analog, I think they have 38 or 39 persons right now who are aged 18 or younger, which we would consider kids, not adults. So very similar properties, same type of unit mix in terms of 2s and 3s, very similar demographics. So based on that, I think a reasonable expectation here would be, I mean, the math, if you create a ratio, is 0.6 kids per unit. So for this, that would end up to 29 kids, persons 18 years old and younger, up through the end of high school.
So approximately 30 children is what you're anticipating would be here based on this kind of a mix, based on your experience?
Yes, that's right.
And that would also apply not just to Nassau Green, but to your other experiences, Swift's Landing or wherever else?
We don't have the update. We don't have as much information on Swiss Landing because we're still in the process of going through applications and moving folks in. And there, I don't have the exact number of children, but I believe it's coming out to be just slightly less than at Village at Nassau Green. So maybe 0.4 instead of 0.6 kids, but.
Yeah, and part of that is that Swiss Landing also has a senior component, so the marketing for it and the people that are attracted to the property kind of change a little bit.
Well, my impression is that you have a number of properties that you manage like this. Do you have experience based on those properties that would provide you with more specific information?
We do, but I guess Chatham and the Cape is very unique, and I wouldn't want to compare the number of children we have in a property that is in kind of Boston or Philadelphia to what would happen here in Chatham. But this ratio is based on the sampling we have on the Cape, would make sense.
Well, one of the reasons why I pursue this a fair amount is that one of the comments that we had received from Mr. Buckley in connection with this property was that, in his experience, children would have a tendency when he was in that area to go across the street and play in the area on the other side of the road, which was more attractive for the kids to use. And as a result, that was one of the reasons that prompted us to talk about a crosswalk that would be necessary in this area. And I know that you are willing to petition the state to the extent that it's necessary to get a crosswalk in there. From our viewpoint, it may be that the crosswalk would be necessary as a condition to having the project at all, regardless of whether the state would agree. If the state did not agree, then perhaps the project would not go forward if we felt there was a sufficient danger to children from traffic going through that process. So that's why I've been pursuing in part the question of the number of children that would be expected to be there. Anyhow, that's just an explanation for that. The other thing that I've been pursuing is the streetscape and the front area. And I know that we've got several different conflicting processes going on here, one of which is to bring buildings under some of the West Chatham zoning closer to the road. And I think that can be beneficial depending upon the kind of buildings you're talking about and the use that they're put to. But one question I've got with respect to this project is that we're accommodating a number of neighbors, which we should be doing in terms of setback. and their exposure to the project. But really, the project is for 90% of Chatham residents and any visitors is the front visage that you see when you go down 28 towards Chatham. And so I've been concerned about what is that streetscape going to look like. And we've gotten some responses to that by having a design plan that shows us some of those issues. But these are large buildings, and they're going to be within, in one case, 9 feet or so of the property line. So that's one reason why I've been pursuing the streetscape. Your site plan shows several trees in front of the buildings on 28. I'm unclear as to, and these are, I think, new trees. I'm unclear as to what size those are going to be.
We'll ask Mark to come up and address that.
Yeah, and I guess one other comment I'd like to make about the setback from the street is that as you can see, the property line is actually not at the road. So with the management building, you're probably closer to 40 feet away from the road because there is a significant distance between the property line and the road, and it varies across Main Street.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand. I mean, the property building is not the closest building anyhow. But can you explain what the size of the plantings are?
Sure, so currently, the trees are spec'd at 3 to 3.5 inch caliper, and which are sizable trees to plant. They would be going in roughly 10 to 15 feet tall to start.
So approximately 10 to 15 feet tall would be the ones which are indicated on the roadway there side?
Yes,
And those are all new trees?
correct.
And there are no existing trees there?
There's only, along the frontage on the property, in front of the management building, there's 2 existing pine trees that are in questionable shape.
So when I look at the Union portrayal of the road frontage there, to me, those trees look much more substantial than the rendering than what is actually what you're talking about putting in there. Am I incorrect on that?
Possibly. I mean, there'll be new plantings. They won't be full mature trees. They will be at some point. I guess it's at what point in time will these be like this?
So these buildings
right
will
after
will not be shielded as nearly as you can see as it's portrayed on these submittals.
I would estimate those are shown roughly 20 feet tall, so it's not too far off from what is going to be installed. And, every tree is different, so some will be wider and shorter, and some will be taller.
Okay.
And they're just going to get bigger from there. So we'll reach this, I think, fairly soon after installation.
I see.
I also believe we spec fast-growing trees as well to.
All right. And you provided us with a bunch of information which has been really very helpful in terms of signage and how that will look. We've got a crosswalk that's been added. You've offered options on color. I agree with Virginia Fenwick that probably white makes more sense than perhaps using other colors. Her memo has been very helpful in terms of consolidating a number of the thoughts that all of us on the board have, I think. And you've adjusted for height, I think, which has been good. You've adjusted for setback for Jesse's Landing and the Levitts. You've responded to the suggestions of different traffic flow in the project itself and parking. And I made a request for a lease, a copy of a lease, and you provided that, which has been very good and interesting. A lot of these things have come as a result of feedback from the community, which has been very helpful to us in raising issues that we could then address. One question I have is, how much turnover do you find that you have in these projects once you get a tenant in there?
In this location, this type of product, very limited turnover. We can get the data from Village and Nauset Green, but I believe it's just a couple units a year at Village and Nauset Green.
Because I did notice that the leases are very thorough, and they need to be for a lot of different reasons, but they also put a substantial burden on the tenant to help maintain the interior of the project. Aside from all of the utilities and so forth that they're responsible for paying for, they also have, if the oven goes, the stove goes, if the dishwasher goes, whatever, they pick up the tab for that.
I believe that's only if it's caused by their damage.
Pardon me?
If they damaged it somehow.
So if it just wears out or it stops functioning, that it's replaced by Penrose?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I guess just to address that a little bit, I think our management company manages properties like this all over the country. And these are populations that have often limited means. And the goal is tenant preservation. It's not that, oh, you violated this lease clause by a little bit, we're going to issue you a lease violation. It's more just protections, but our goal is always to work with the tenant. Even during COVID, when there were a lot of arrears, our goal was to how to work with the tenant on a payment plan that actually makes sense for them, as opposed to exactly to the every penny, every dollar that they owe. It's always about how do we work with the tenants, because these are all the individuals and families and seniors that we care about, and we want them to stay in their unit and to kind of be a successful tenant.
And I appreciate that, and I'm sure that all of us appreciate that. My background is a lawyer, so my tendency is to always look at the issue of if Penrose isn't there and they sell to someone else for whatever reason, you have to have some protections or consider what the situation may be for the tenant.
I would just like to add in there, so we're going to be a long-time holder, just a minimum for the compliance period of the tax credits, which can be up to 50 years. And also, so these types of projects can't be built and then flipped, because we're on the hook with the investor for that stream of tax credits that go out 15 years, and then also above that for any compliance. So there's little to no transfer of ownership of these tax credit type properties at all.
Okay. And then one other thing that I did want to sort of clear up, we've had some comments from the public about the fact that, we need this housing for our police and our firemen and our teachers and so forth. But really, those persons are probably earning more money than is going to qualify them for any of these projects. Isn't that correct?
That's probably true for the fire chief, but probably not necessarily true for the person starting out.
So a starting fireman may be okay, but not if they've got two incomes coming into the apartment.
Yeah, so approximately, and these are about to be updated again, that the rents are based on HUD, who issues every year new area median incomes, the AMIs. But based on a current unit mix and affordability mix, the people who could live here would be making between $30,000 to $140,000 a year, because we have different levels of affordability. So it's a broad range of people. So if they're making over 140,000 a year, then they would unlikely be able to get a unit here.
And in terms of a starting salary for a policeman or fireman or teacher in Chatham, that tends to run where?
I don't have that information.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, David Nixon.
I'd like to go back to Ms. Fenwick's point about the density. And tell me again your answer to her question of would you consider lowering, I think the way she put it, lowering the number of units from 48 to 42. I don't think you fully answered that question.
No,
Hey, Rio?
Whoa,
Rio?
whoa, you have to be recognized by the
Oh, sorry.
chair. I'm
Sorry,
not saying
this
I
is
won't
Charlie
recognize
Adams.
you, but you have to be, because you
Thank
know.
you.
Okay, your name, sir?
Would you, yeah, this is Charlie Adams from Penrose.
Yes, okay.
Do you mind if I answer that question?
No, I do not. We just want an answer.
Okay.
Anybody can answer it.
Yeah. So we did have this question did come up, and we have answered it before. You know, if we need to go back to sort of remember, you know, the whole history here, right? The town put out an RFP for housing on this site. We submitted a proposal. The RFP required, basically, they wanted to see as many units as was feasible and comfortable on the site. And so that's what we looked at that, and we thought, okay, our Penrose, as we've heard, you know, from the beginning, we've shared at other meetings that our standard model is 60 units to be able to support the kind of development that we want to support by having a full-time manager and a full-time maintenance person there. So when we first looked at this site, we said, okay, we told our architect, let's see if we can get 60 units on the site, because that's what we need essentially to meet our requirements. That model, having 60 units on the site, did not feel comfortable to us. We didn't feel that there was enough open space, that there was enough recreation area, that we couldn't create a sense of community that we're trying to create by having a central green. That's really important to us, to have that sense of community for the folks. So we scaled it back down to a number that we felt that we could, the bare minimum that we felt that we could accommodate on the site, given and the reason we got there is because we have other assets in the area. We have assets in Eastham, we have assets in Orleans, and we have assets in Wareham that are close. So we felt that with those other assets in that area, that we could bend here and stretch a little bit to do a lower number of units and still provide the high quality of housing that we feel is important for us, is important for the town, and is important for our residents. And so that's the number that we're at with 48 units, and it's not feasible for us to do less than that.
So let's make it simple. Was that no?
We've said we cannot do less than 48 units. So big picture, like when we've gone through these meetings with you, right? You know, we've tried to accommodate as many things, you know, as we can. And I think, you know, that's what we're trying to do. I think we have been consistent from the beginning that, you know, that the 48 unit number is what's really is something that, you know, is very difficult for us to come off of. So there's other things that we can do, but it's very difficult for us to come off of that 48 units. We've looked at all kinds of other things and made all other kinds of accommodations, but that's the hard one.
So just to be clear, just to use the right parlance, so you're saying that reducing it from 48 to 42 is financially infeasible?
We're not comfortable dropping it to that number. And I think, you know, one of the things that we were on the site plan, you know, that we've made changes to, you know, we were asked to look at different things, and we never asked to sort of look at what that was, and we wouldn't be able to do that anyway. So yes, we would not be comfortable doing that.
Yeah, but are you saying that it's financially infeasible to do it?
It's not feasible to provide the kind of development that we want to provide for you and the town and what we're comfortable doing. We couldn't put our name behind it.
Do I have to ask you again?
We're saying that we cannot professionally manage it to the level that we want to do it at less than 48 units. We're not saying that it's
Yeah,
not.
it's finance, well, no, I mean, it's not financially feasible to do this project with that. And that's, we've been, that's.
All right, we
That's-
heard that one. That was good. I mean, there was an answer that we were asking, is it financially feasible? Because we'll get back to that later. All right, David, did you have anything else? No? And, okay, second to the last, the penultimate.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for working with the abutters. And I want to thank the abutters. I think they've been reasonable through this process. I've been in the minority. I look at the site plan, if you don't mind pulling up the site plan again. And I look at the development, and I look at the community building in the front, and the placement, and the fact that there's no abutters around it. And it screams to me, there should be more units there. And I know I'm in the minority, but I think the demand for this type of housing outweighs the need for a community building. And I feel the town of Chatham is subsidizing this project, and the town voters voted for this type of housing. So when I just look at it, it makes more sense. Someone made the comment earlier tonight, roofs over their heads. There could be 5 more families here. So that's the last I'm going to say about it, but that's how I feel. And I'm going to move on to our new Chatham residents and what I'd like to see for them. And so I have a few questions. And, while we're talking about community buildings, this is Cape Cod. If you want a community, we need some community gas grills on this property. I see in the rent, in the lease, there's no gas grills allowed. You have this big green space, how about throwing a gas grill in there for these people?
Yeah, we could definitely do that. We have done that. I believe we did that in Wareham. We usually don't allow it at the buildings because we
Yep.
can't for insurance purposes.
Sure.
But we can in the recreational areas off the buildings. That's definitely something we could add.
Okay.
And we have done.
That would be great. We have all of this landscaping, and we've added to it, and we have all of this green area. And I used to work in multifamily housing and built some multifamily housing. And initially it goes in and it looks beautiful, but unless you water it, it does not make sense. So I would request that you put in an irrigation well and provide some irrigation, which I don't see anywhere in the plan.
No, we typically don't include irrigation because there's usually maintenance issues with it, freezing and cutting it up, and cost. But we did add it at Village and Nauset Green, and we would definitely consider adding it here. What we've typically just included in the base specifications is the contractor is responsible for the establishment of it. That's just for the first year. It's the most critical year, and they're responsible for the watering. And then after that, it would be, the maintenance folks would be responsible for watering certain areas. So even though we typically don't include that as a standard, that's something we're reconsidering. And, well, especially considering the amount of additional landscaping we're putting in here. I mean, we ourselves don't want to have to put in a huge amount of expensive landscaping and have it not survive.
I mean, if you
And
have this
flourish.
beautiful green space in the middle, I don't see it necessarily, and if it's going to get a lot of traffic flow, surviving unless there's some type of irrigation.
Yeah, what we found too is it's much easier to put it in when you're under construction than to come in later and have to do it.
Yep.
And you have to dig through your roads
And
and concrete walkways.
I'm not suggesting you use town water, I'm suggesting you
Well
put in
water.
your own well, yeah.
Put a well in.
Well, in, yeah. And The other question I have is there's notations about the property being solar-ready. If this is all heat pumps, state of Massachusetts requires, no fossil fuel now, which doesn't bother me, but the cost of electricity in Massachusetts is one of the highest rates in the town. So I'm worried about the residents and the cost of electricity. So I would like to see the solar panels, and I'd like to see the solar panels, the electricity somehow credited to the actual residents. Not necessarily just going back to Penrose. I'd like to see that so that their rents are, not subsidized, but, you're taking into consideration they're going to have high electricity bills. I know you're going to build a somewhat passive building, there'll be extra insulation, but still, I would like to see that solar installed, and I would like to see the solar energy credits somehow make it back to the residents. And,
Yeah, I think we'll have to look into, every utility does it a little differently, and if they can allow us to actually have it offset the meters on the units.
Okay.
So we'll have to look into that.
or even if goes back into 1 meter or whatever credit is, that could be dispersed. It's just a math problem, I guess. That's it for me.
Randy?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, there was
Yep.
one thing I forgot that I wanted
Sure.
to tell. I got off on my rant and I forgot. I would like to comment with respect to the siding and the coloring and all that. I actually can go any way. I do agree, I think, with Ginny and others have expressed. I think the original proposal was fine. And I appreciate the response with the muted colors, which I think were fine as well. But I think the original proposal, and if you're showing shingles, siding type on backsides and clappers on the front and that kind of thing, I'm fine with any of it. I certainly trust Union's abilities to handle the aesthetics well. So I want them to know my feeling on that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to go to the sign. It's, when you ride up and down, the HBDC area on Main Street, properties have one sign. And so I'm interested in one double-sided sign on your own property. I don't know if you realize it, but the sign you have on your diagram is not on your property. So one sign, double-sided, on your property is something I'm interested in.
We can do that.
Sure.
We'll do that.
Yeah, that's an easy one. You got to warm up. All right.
Oh, there's harder ones coming?
Yeah. Okay. Crosswalk, you've said that you would apply. We would like, I think more than just me, but I would like you to put it could be a condition that you show us that you've applied and then provide us the answer you get from the state. And you would need to do that before you get a building permit. So just to, not that we don't trust you, but trust and
No,
verify.
I think our incentives are aligned here. We're not against the crosswalk.
Yeah,
It's a great
sure.
idea.
Yeah.
We were just worried that it was becoming a condition and it's outside of our control.
We
And
understand
if
that.
other people
Yeah.
tell us no, then we're stuck.
Right.
But
as
we'll do
long
our
as-
best and
Yep.
push forward as hard as we can to get that.
Okay. Okay, so I noticed on the lease, it says no work trucks, but I think somebody had said that that's not going to be the lease for this project necessarily, but if it says no work trucks, then that sort of causes an issue if you think these people are going to be, workforce housing. They might be carpenters or, plumbers.
Yeah, I don't know that specific clause, so we'll need to get back to you on that.
Sure, absolutely. And also, short-term rentals, we wouldn't want to see these used as short-term rentals, so it would be nice for the lease to have a provision that prohibits that.
Yeah, it does, it's going to be even more than that. The tax
Sure.
credits don't allow short-term leases anyways. We would lose the tax credits and then have to pay
Yeah,
the
but
money
I guess,
back.
Sarah was looking at your lease, and, she noticed those things, and I agree with her.
One part, it did allow for subletting under the occupant, with permission of the, of Penrose. In writing, it allowed for subletting of the units. The parking was, commercial vehicles was under the parking section. My guess is you probably meant you don't want someone parking a tow truck there. But oftentimes, from what we've experienced in the building department, there are contractors that have a commercial vehicle, which pickup truck that has a commercial plate.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be fine with our property management staff, so we can take a look at that.
That'd be great. Okay, so back to 48 to 42. You finally did say that it's financially infeasible. I'm going to ask our...
Sorry, this is Charlie, probably.
Charlie, no, that's my echo.
Wait a minute, hang on a second. Turn that off.
I think I can answer that.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
So the question, the feasibility, right? So maybe this is a easier way to describe it. To have a professionally managed facility, there's a lot of costs, staff costs, landscaping, snow removal, resident services, porters, grounds cleaning, and all these costs, they're going to be the same for this site, whether there's 40 units or 48 units. And so when you get down, what we found when we were getting down less units, those units, in order, if you were to pencil it out at that much lower number, you'd have to really reduce the amount of operating expenses, which is the stuff that, the stuff that we need to professionally manage it as a Class A building and development. So that's what we're saying. And that's why our sort of standard is like 60, because once you get up to 60, now you have the economies there. Those costs are the same, but now you have enough units that really support it. And I think what Charlie was saying, here we got a little lower than that, which is very rare. But the reason we were able to do that was because we can share some costs with our other facilities that are nearby, sharing some staffs, sharing the secondary maintenance person. So that's what got us comfortable going down to 48. We're not comfortable going down any
No,
further than
I
48.
understand that you're not comfortable, so now I'm going to call on our attorney, Jay Tolman. I know you're here.
I'm here.
Yeah, so what do we do now, Jay, when the applicant tells us it doesn't seem to be a good idea to go down?
Wait.
What's our remedy?
So there's a process that was specifically contemplated in a regulatory revision to the 40B regs on this issue. It used to be, because the standard under 40B, as I think was noted earlier, is that conditions are measured in the first instance upon a challenge on whether or not they're economic or uneconomic. And the Housing Appeals Committee, in an effort to let the process unfold in an orderly way, adopted a regulation, I think about 12 or 13 years ago. It's 760 CMR 56.056, I believe. And what it says is, don't ask for pro formas or analyze economic impacts until there's an impasse, because it might be needless. So what the regulation suggests is you get through with all your technical review, which in large part you've done here, the traffic and the engineering. And if a majority of the board members are of the position that a condition should be imposed that would be particularly sensitive, and as we know, density is where the rubber hits the road on these projects, then it can ask the applicant, as you've asked the applicant, does this proposed condition, which is a density condition render the project uneconomic. So if in fact a majority of your voting members, and I know there's associate members too, but if in fact a majority of your members are interested in knowing the answer to that question, then it's incumbent upon the applicant to demonstrate, and it wouldn't be tonight, I wouldn't put them to that level
No,
of
not
proof,
tonight,
to
not tonight,
demonstrate.
yeah.
Yeah, to demonstrate to you that it would render the project uneconomic, and then you would consider that. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't impose that condition, but then you could potentially do peer review of that uneconomic showing. You're not required to, but you're at least allowed to ask the applicant to demonstrate to you if a majority of the board members want a costly condition imposed as to why this particular condition would render the project uneconomic. So I know that Ms. Fenwick references it. I know that Mr. Nixon mentioned it as well, and now you've mentioned it as well, and the other board members had varying opinions on the subject, some not concerned with density, and some, maybe haven't formed an opinion on it. But if the board or a majority of the board is interested in that subject, then I think it's required under that particular regulation to at least answer the question, so that would frame further discussion at your next session of your meeting. And at that time, I guess you could consider whether or not you needed further review of the answer to that question. But the regulations are clear on it. We used to have these pitched battles in 40B projects at the beginning of the process on this subject. So this regulation was designed in a way to put it more towards the end of it, when you've already looked at things like traffic and engineering, setbacks, all the other stuff, which you've done. So now is an appropriate time to do that if that's what the board wants to do. And I know that Penrose has kind of framed out a very general opinion on this, and I imagine that they would probably want to have the opportunity, if the board wanted to go down this road, to frame it in more detail. And I think that's what you'd have in front of you for your next meeting, if that's where you want to go. And again, I'm not suggesting that is where you're going, but if the board voted to go down that road, then as a straw poll, so to speak, without making any hard and fast decisions on density, then that would be the process that the regulations requires.
So we would vote as to whether to ask them for a pro forma to show us that it's financially infeasible to reduce the density?
Or finationally infeasible,
That's what I
either
mean,
way.
financially
So, right,
infeasible.
yeah.
So how
yeah,
many
I
of
think- I
us
think
need
that's
to
the
say
process.
yes to that? Because we're gonna put Virginia Fenwick in that camp.
No, clearly Virginia's in that camp, so I don't know right now who the voting members are, but I
Okay,
would-
so the voting members are Virginia Fenwick, Mr. Veach, Mr. Nixon, myself, and Paul Semple. So I would say there's three of us that would like to see that.
Well, I think if that's the case, then I think that it would be incumbent. And I'm not saying you ignore the views of the non-voting members, because I think
not
they're informative.
ignoring.
But
Yeah, and for all I
Right.
know, Paul could want to see it too. We haven't asked him yet.
Right.
I don't think we need to ask Mr. Veach, but. No, but, okay, so three of us would be enough. Three's enough.
I think so. And again, it doesn't lock you in or anyone into
No,
anything.
no, of
It's
course
just
not.
another information point for the project. And the fact, yeah, and I would assume that even though Ms. Fenwick had an interest in seeing if reduced density was possible, I don't think that she has signaled that her vote would be dependent
She has
upon
not.
an answer to that
She has
question.
absolutely not signaled
Right.
that.
In fairness, I wanted to make sure, in fairness to Virginia, who's not here, she wrote a comprehensive and well-thought-out menu, but I don't read that as saying that that's how she's
No.
voting ultimately.
It is not, and it's not how I'm saying it either. And I don't know about
Right.
Mr. Nixon. And Paul, what do you want to do?
Well, I think if you want to raise that issue, we should raise it at the next meeting with Virginia here, and we get her idea of how she wants to vote on it. I'm not in a position right now to say that I think that the proposed density is definitely too high. I'm not willing to say that it has to be 42 instead of 48. I'm willing to consider that issue at the next meeting.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time in our timeline, so we wanted to raise it now out of respect to Penrose. We feel comfortable that we have 3 people that at least want to see that. Again, not saying that our vote's dependent on it, on the answer, but it's information that we feel is important before we take a vote.
Well, let's get the information.
Right. Counsel?
Yes, thank you. Before you all reach that vote, I just want to emphasize that it's an ask, and you may or may not be empowered to ask that, but it's also an ask that is going to take more time. It's going to go against the contemplated goals of the RFP, which was to create enough units on the site that would fit on the site. And so, for those reasons, we'd like you to stop and consider whether you want to ask for that.
We want to ask for it, and I just want counsel to respond to what you just said, please.
Yeah, I think that, we've been very careful here, and I think you've done a really good job, Randy, of respecting the space that the Select Board and the Affordable Housing Trust has been in these 2 projects and not interfering with their space. But you have an independent job to do. So I'm not taking sides on this one way or the other. I do some work for the Select Board and the Affordable Housing Trust as well. But from a rules perspective, this is exactly the process that's contemplated. Ultimately, I think that Penrose has already kind of framed a general response as to why they think it's not a great idea and why it would be difficult for them to do. But I think that they should be given the opportunity, and it's required that they respond to your question. They don't have to, in which case I think that, you're left with a lack of a response to deal with. But the regulations state exactly this. I want to be clear. The state and the Housing Appeals Committee generally resolves these uneconomic issues in favor of a set of mathematic principles that are very favorable to the development community. It's kind of a different form of math, so to speak. So I don't want to fill anyone with any kind of illusions as to how these things may get framed ultimately, but it is still part of the process. And there are some cases out there that are supportive of towns kind of rejiggering of the math, so to speak, on this. But I'm never going to lead the board or the applicant down a primrose path here, but I think it's a necessary step. You've invoked your rights on it, and I think that that's where we're going. And Penrose, who I respect a great deal, is entitled to respond as they see fit. If your next meeting is October 2nd, there should be enough time for them to put together a narrative or a new pro forma as to why such a reduction would either harm them fiscally or why it would be a real negative to the particular project. And I'm sure your board would consider that genuinely.
We would consider that genuinely, and there had to have been an initial pro forma, correct?
Yes.
So you have something to, to pivot from.
Yeah, there's one. I'm sure
Probably
it's
take you out
changed a
on the
little.
back of a napkin to figure it out,
Yeah.
honestly.
We had a very thorough pro forma that's showing it worked
We-
at 48 units, which we gave publicly to
We didn't get
the
that.
RFP process.
We did not receive that. We've rummaged through. We didn't just come up with this. I don't know who's talking, but you're not recognized. But we don't have it. And we didn't just think of this morning, we trying to look for it. We don't have it. Our board doesn't have it.
I guess from our perspective, is there's significant concern about these 8 units, reducing these 8 units is significant, or 6 units, that cause a public safety, negative health
That's
impacts,
exactly right.
environmental
Yeah, 8
impacts.
is even better, but we did say 6, so we'll stick with that.
If the board feels those 6 units, building those does create that significant negative public impact.
And there's water and, just general wear and tear on the town. So we just want to see that, before we make such an important decision, we're in a very difficult spot here, as you know. And we want to make sure we have all the facts, and that's probably essentially one of the most important facts. So please provide that to us.
Okay.
Great. So I guess we'll ask for, actually, I want to ask council to sort of give us sort of a timeline on this. We started on April 16th, 2025, Jay, and I guess we sort of have a date of 12. Well, I'm going to let Sarah do it. Let Sarah do it.
Okay, so town council, application was received April 16th, 2025. Original public hearing was opened within 30 days, May 8th, 2025. 180 days from that is November 4th, which is a Tuesday.
We're backing it up, right?
Yeah.
To October 30th, which would be a date that we could do. And then after October 30th, if we close the hearing that day, then we have until 12/8, that as, the drop dead date, in a sense.
For the decision to be stamped with voted on and stamped at the clerk's
Does
office.
that sound right, counsel? You're muted, sorry.
I haven't done the math the way
Sure.
that Sarah has, but it
Yeah.
certainly seems right to me. Yep.
And one more thing, I have a question. What's the real difference between the negotiation portion and what we're doing now? I feel like we've been negotiating since the first day. Does it look different?
No, I think the only thing that's a little bit different here, and Penrose has been a good partner with the board in terms of negotiating in and around some of the concerns the boards and the neighbors have raised. It's encouraged, these negotiations and discussions is encouraged throughout the 40B process, and I think it's been a really good process. I think that it never really stops. The only difference here is that there's a specific regulation that talks about this subject matter. So Penrose has willingly come to the table and negotiated and compromised on a bunch of items. That's encouraged. If they had said no at any given point in time to, say, the increased setbacks or the decreased height, then we'd be in the exact same position we're in now, where like, well, tell us why you can't do that. So far, they've been willing to do things as part of the ongoing iterative process that obviously don't render the project uneconomic, otherwise they wouldn't offer them. Here, they've drawn a line in the, I don't want to call it in the sand because who knows where we end up with it, but they have suggested that this is not something that they can do. So that's when the regulation gets kicked in. So that's all.
Okay, good. So we've followed along, and now I guess we'll ask for a motion to continue it till October 2nd, if that's okay with you, Penrose?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. Paul?
I'll move to grant the request to continuance to October 2nd.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Does Ed vote on this? No. No, okay, Dave?
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that's 4-0. We'll see you.
Who's voting for Jenny?
Oh, somebody's voting for Ginny tonight. I'm so sorry. Could be any of the three of you. Maybe Lee.
Lee.
Yeah, Lee, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
All right, very good. It's unanimous 5-0. We'll see you on October 2nd. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Dave Veach seconds and votes yes.
Ed votes yes.
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Yes.
Steve votes yes.
As do I. We are adjourned, and what time is it?
5:14 p.m.
Okay, good night, chat.